Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 911 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again as Ukraine drives even deeper into Kursk, and also the locals are turning on Putin. What do you know? And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we have really big news over the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as we have gotten word that Ukraine is continuing to drive deeper into the Kursk Oblast in several directions. And not only that, we also got to hear huge news from Suta today that at the very beginning of the offensive, it appears that there was some low-level collaboration going on in between Russian local authorities and the Ukrainian armed forces, as the local authorities appear to have deliberately downplayed to an unbelievable measure the severity of the incoming offensive, so that way the Russians would not divert a large amount of manpower immediately into this area, allowing for the Ukrainians to have a very successful offensive very rapidly, and once again showing that even the Russian local government is beginning to turn on the Russian central government led by Putin. Not only that, we got big news today of Ukrainian forces continuing to bombard the few pontoon crossings that have been set up over here near the area of Glishkovo, and also within the direction of the bird bath as well. We have also been able to get some more interesting news that apparently the Ukrainians are actually having some either complete air superiority in this area or contested air superiority, to the point that they're actually bombarding the city of Glishkovo with airstrikes. You heard that correct. It's not artillery bombardments that Glishkovo is being hit with. It is actually airstrikes from the Ukrainian Air Force that are hitting the town of Glishkovo and a large amount of the Russian forces south of the Reka Seym. Not only that, Ukraine has continued to fight in all directions in the Kursk Oblast, continuing to try and expand outwards and capture more villages. And we have also gotten some very interesting news that the Russians have taken their version of the Space Force, given them rifles, and put them out there in the Kursk Oblast because they're so desperate for manpower at this point, according to the British Ministry of Defense. We also got
the Russians putting Space Rangers out here to fight, man, that's a whole new level of desperate.
Guardians, Matthew. They're called Guardians. I'm just kidding.
Oh, Guardians. Space Guardians. That's right. I forgot.
The Space Marines. But beyond that, we also got to hear some hypothetical statements that there was an invasion into Bryansk today by Ukrainian forces. We have not been able to corroborate that information, so we're reporting that as a rumor today. But still, if it is not a rumor, it is a very serious ordeal, and we probably will make a very special emergency video on that, or a stream, probably within the next few days, well, really tomorrow, if that is actually happening. At the same time, we also started to hear that according to Russian intelligence, they actually believe that there is a larger offensive that is going to be breaking out within the Belgrade area, and so far, the only forces from the Ukrainian side that have been involved in this direction have only been special forces, and the special forces have actually been able to capture the areas around Pokrovsk and Vyazovo up here about a week ago, interestingly enough. Not only that, we've also heard some wild information that the fire that started near Pokrovsk about 4 days ago at the massive oil depot outside the city is still burning 4 days after the fire was started. An unbelievable fact, considering that most fires have never lasted this long, and it continues to wreak havoc on the oil storage and supplies in this area, as they are starting to dwindle very thin due to very hot weather within the areas, particularly around the oil depot itself. Not only that, we got to see that in Russia, Putin has continued his visit with Ramzan Kadyrov and ended up doing something really stupid today, which we'll show. And we also got to hear that the USS Abraham Lincoln, the most advanced carrier task force in the world currently, has made it into the Middle East. And we have a little bit of footage from the flight deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln as it arrived in the area today. But we have absolutely loads of news. And these are just some of the big talking points of the night. We have loads and loads of little itty-bitty pieces of news to cover in between as well, and it is an absolutely crazy night from start to finish. And so moving on into the major breaking news tonight, the local government flat out betrayed the Russians. Like, I'm not kidding. According to what we know in the Sudzha Oblast, or the Sudzha area of the Kursk Oblast, better way to put it, the Russian local government here actually downplayed the offensive and how fast it was moving multiple times to the central Russian government to throw them off. This is something that we've never heard about before, and we were able to hear this from the Kyiv Post today, as the Kyiv Post stated that intercepted calls revealed that the local government in Russia's Kursk region inadvertently helped Ukrainian forces by deceiving Moscow authorities as to the severity of the initial invasion. Now, isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? So pretty much what happened was that the Ukrainians broke through the Russian lines pretty much within the first few hours of the offensive, and so the local government within this area was called, and they asked, is it serious or is it really bad? And they went, no, everything normal, all good. And then the Ukrainians steamrolled the local government as well, and then just continued to drive on past Sudza and into every single direction that we see that the Ukrainians are in today. If it was not for that happening, this offensive may have ended up being curtailed a little bit stronger by the Russians than what we saw so far. It is pretty crazy to see that that was an actual fact that's been reported, and that there are intercepted phone calls to boot. We don't have translations for them, but I did hear some of the audio files today, and it does confirm that those kind of calls were made, and the severity of the situation was wildly downplayed in the area of the Sudzha direction. We also got to see some interesting, never-before-seen footage today from around the area of Gogolevka of how the very opening of the offensive began, and how Ukrainian forces were fighting in this area as they advanced onto the town of Sudzha. And hopefully this loads. Sometimes
Red's been doing that for a couple of nights now. It's been taking a good minute to load like videos and stuff. There we go.
Here we go. Look at that. And so here's the clip. I think we're gonna have to mute this. Yeah, we will. But we can see right here that they're putting out all of the information about the time of day. We can see that the fog is covering the entirety of the Kursk Oblast as the Ukrainian vehicles continue to drive ahead. We can actually see them here clearing the way through the Russian minefields and Dragon's Teeth near Gogolevka. You can actually see the reservoir over there that makes up Gogolevka as the Ukrainians are making their way through. And so...
Ми засіли в посадці, відсиділись там.
Let me see if I can actually put subtitles on this. Okay, so I can. So let us try and get some English subtitles. And so, there we go. And
Look at that.
And so we're going to mute this so that way we don't fall into the whole copyright issue, which we hate. But I will be reading the subtitles. So let me back up and start this over again right here. It was morning somewhere already. Well, it was already visible that we were approaching the border. Tanks were covering us. Then we sat down in the trade wind, sat there and opened fire on the helicopters, the Russian helicopters that were nearby. It came out, and then we entered Puna. This is after the border. There's already a village in our place there where our farm was. We dispersed, and we started a fight. And we see a little bit of that here. We see a striker, an M1126, or an M1127, I believe. And we hear applause, apparently. That's actually the sound of gunfire. Like, the subtitles got that wrong. They were all sitting in the corn. We opened fire with automatic rifles, with RPGs from Browning machine guns, and then there was silence. And music. They all drove in. They didn't expect it. In short, they ate them all at the roadblock. The transformer was theirs too, so that they would not have any communications, because it's the same communication there at the entrance, and it seems to be that the Decepticons, the tower, is still, I don't remember standing, to be honest. We tried so that this and that flank was covering, that and that flank was covering, so that there were more RPGs smacking at them, and grenades started to be thrown, even if they were far away. Well, just so they wouldn't approach. Then they stopped climbing. They wanted to do something. Maybe they were already talking there, but I say, give up. There was silence. Brownings flew there with an RPG. After the day was over, we fired at them. It was already dark. I feel like I'm talking like William Shatner because these subtitles are like forming so slowly. I'm like, we fired at them in the dark or something like that. It's like, damn.
It always sucks when you get eaten at the roadblock. Like, that's always a tough one when that happens.
Dude, the Ukrainians literally just smacked them. It was like one of those like montage videos maybe where someone's cooking like the chicken's alive. They grab it by the neck and like pull it, and next thing you know, they're slapping it down into like a griddle, and it's literally like a raw chicken or something. It's like this. But it was already
animal abuse.
I mean, yeah, you know, but it is what it is. But the camouflage, the combat equipment, dug in and put out a corner and took turns standing by the car, so that someone did not get in that night. The cap arrived. No cap. The hell was there because we were on duty in the morning. Well, those who were on duty were those who got out shorter. They were the short guys. I see the branches were already cut. Music.
Oh, look, some more prisoners. That's always good.
Oh, we can see the engineering vehicle, the striker engineering vehicle. More music. We see a bridge layer here that the Ukrainians actually had in the area. We just didn't expose ourselves. We did it so that we were invisible. Well, it can end very, very badly. This is our submarine. No, that's not. These subtitles are wrong. That is an APC. So I think the subtitles are inaccurate. So take this with a grain of salt, this translation, because I'm having an assumption. It's not that accurate, to be entirely honest with y'all. There is even a city there for torpedo tubes. What? We have good equipment. We just drove a little slowly. You can see for yourself how it's necessary to go on there on armored vehicles, on some other equipment. You yourself understand what this is. No? One. Okay. Refuses to fight, as they say, to die. You can always be in time for this. You do. And need a lot of brains. But let's let it cool down one more time. Yes, and one more time that it would be like that at least 5 times. It has to be like that.
Always be in time to die. Don't be late for that.
Don't be late, damn it. Like, that's a fun. Anyways. We see them driving past the Kursk road sign near the border checkpoint, driving through the border checkpoint. You see the Russian side of the border checkpoint. More music. Dramatic music. Long-lasting music. Understand, I worked at a mine in the Dnipropetrovsk region, and how can I say that there was a reservation? Well, for some reason, I didn't stand there already. That reservation was taken by the Sioux, and even though they gave it, and what should I say? What should I say if they're 70 kilometers from my parents, and how will it turn out? Where will I flee further? It's up to me, and what will they think of me? Just here, they need to be damned, destroyed, because they won't give peace, as they say, and let's give Crimea. Give us. We don't need the Donetsk region there, but give it to me. They'll be like that. When the Ricotta gets sick, he's crawling.
The hell's a Ricotta?
I have no idea. Ricotta? I don't know. And Judy said the translation is so off. I'm starting to really get that at this point. I think that's not up to even argument. I think this is way off. Well,
that was a very interesting piece right there. I learned a lot from that.
It's not over. I want to be at home, near my girlfriend, near my parents. I also want to say somewhere there and go and dance there somewhere. Go for a walk there somewhere. Even in the same parks there. Wait. Until they come to your house. Well, that's the same. Well, guys, it's simple. Well, we're also not eternal. Join the armed forces of Ukraine. Get cheap.
He has a little bit of a stammer.
These subtitles, man, were rough. I think we're going to have to end this clip here, but still showing a little bit of the opening fighting in the Kursk Oblast, at least at the beginning, but still fairly interesting to see. With that, we're going to be moving on and into our next bit of news, where we did also get to see that the Ukrainians are capturing more police vehicles and are beginning to put them into service with the Ukrainian armed forces. This is technically a Patriot. You can actually see it on the rear little tire hub thing right here that holds the spare tire. This is a Patriot that was used by the police forces, and the Ukrainians have now requisitioned it for military usage. Pretty cool to see that. The Ukrainians have actually started to do this a lot with local police vehicles, because technically they're Russian government equipment, and this means that they can seize them and then use them in the war effort very easily as limited supply, or some sort of medevac, or some sort of a smaller form of vehicular transportation in general. Pretty neat to see, but of course great to know that the Ukrainians are trying to use anything that they can find at the moment. Moving on from everything around the local Suja area. Well, actually, we have one more thing. We do have the Ukrainian units that are involved in the offensive so far, or at least the ones we've gotten proof for. So, let us begin. We have seen the Nightingale unit, the 3rd Mechanized Battalion of the 22nd Mechanized Brigade. We have seen a tank battalion of the 22nd Mechanized Brigade as well. This is suggesting that most likely the entirety of the 22nd Mechanized Brigade is currently in operation within the area, which also, considering that this is a more heavier set mechanized brigade, it's showing that there is what I would say is a heavy brigade that is active in the area. We've also seen that the 409th Rifle Battalion of the 22nd Mechanized Brigade is also there as well. We're not entirely sure if the entirety of the 22nd Mechanized Brigade is currently within the area. We just know that some detached battalions at the moment of the 22nd Mechanized Brigade are currently there. We also got to see the 2nd Company of the 33rd Assault Battalion, a very small element, is also present in the offensive as well. We can also see that the Sukval Battalion of the 47th Mechanized Brigade, the famous Magura that's currently fighting around Pokrovsk at the moment, is involved in the offensive. We do know that the 47th Magura is entirely within the Pokrovsk direction at this moment, so this appears to be a detached battalion that was moved into the area and probably integrated into some sort of a task force that is made up of a hodgepodge of different battalions, probably including the 409th Rifle Battalion. We also got to see that the 43rd Artillery Brigade is involved, at least one battalion. We also got to see that another artillery battalion of the 43rd Brigade is also involved as well. So it seems as though a decent amount of their firepower, or at least artillery firepower, is being drawn from the 43rd Artillery Brigade. We can also see that the 48th Engineering Brigade is involved, the entirety of that brigade. We can also see the 54th Mechanized Brigade, also down south near the Pokrovsk direction at the moment, has sent the 1st Mechanized Battalion to probably be a part of a combined task force. This is something that that the Western doctrine, really modernized doctrine, allows for, is the battalion, which is the basic fighting element of an army, for people to pick apart other brigades and pull battalions out them, and then mesh all of these battalions together into one kind of a task force that is made for a specific tailored purpose. So it seems as though, from what we're telling, there's a decent amount of battalions that are involved in that kind of framework at the moment. We do get to see, however, that apparently the entirety of the 61st Mechanized Brigade may be involved at the moment, because the 99th Mechanized Battalion and the 101st Mechanized Battalion of the 61st Mechanized Brigade are both involved in the offensive, highly suggesting that they have the entirety of the brigade within the region at the moment. We can also see that the 1st and 2nd Air Assault Battalions of the 80th Air Assault Brigade are involved as well, once again showing that more so a motorized battalion, possibly reinforced with armor, is currently in the area as well, along with a large amount of the 82nd Air Assault Brigade. Just to name off the groups that are currently involved in the 82nd Air Assault Brigade, there's the 2nd Air Assault Battalion, the 3rd Air Assault Battalion, the 4th Air Mobile Battalion, and the artillery group of the 82nd Air Assault Brigade. So from what we can understand, most of the 82nd Air Assault Brigade has been documented involved in the offensive. And while it is a lighter brigade, technically on paper, it is reinforced with Challenger 2 main battle tanks as well as AS-90 SPGs, meaning that their artillery forces in the artillery group are incredibly powerful, and also their attached armor forces are also very competent as well and pack a very large punch. We can also see that a larger amount of units are involved as well. I would go through the rest of them, but I feel like I'm probably going to start wearing everyone out after a while of naming all of these off and explaining, but we are getting the idea that at least 6 full-strength brigades are currently involved in this offensive at the moment. It may even be bumped up to 7 if this list is not complete, but it is a very large number of units, and it does seem as though the Ukrainians, with this amount of force, and also with how some of this element appears to be made up of multiple different brigades, battalions, meshed together into a task force, it looks as though that they had a custom-made task force to probably breach the area on the border and then advance rapidly into the Sudzha direction as a whole. Meanwhile, outside of the city, we also got to hear some interesting things out here as well, and this is something that I have to say is incredibly interesting. At the town of Glishkovo, which is largely the anchor point for everything south of the Reka Seym at this moment that Ukraine is trying to take, the Russians have been trying to fortify the area and use it as a bit of a staging area and HQ for the Russian forces that are south of the Reka Seym as they try and coordinate their defensive efforts towards the area of Apanasovka. From what we can tell, the Ukrainians are actually starting to conduct full on, I'm not kidding, full on airstrikes into areas inside of Glishkovo, targeting and destroying known Russian staging areas, logistical bases, and command centers that are setting up within the town. And we can see one of those airstrikes hit right there. And actually multiple bombs landing in different areas of this compound.
They're blasting them mighty fine, I must say.
Man, they're hitting them, like, I mean, incredibly hard. I mean, Ivan and his men were up there on their tiny post, and they were getting pounded.
And they were getting pounded.
But beyond that, we are seeing that the Ukrainians are able to leverage air power against the Russian forces inside of Glishkovo. And we can actually probably geolocate exactly where that was in the town. So let us see if we can. So there is a road, which is a very good sign. And we can also see a specific kind of a layout of houses here. And I think we literally found it right there. Is that it? I would say that that looks a lot like it could be. So let's see right here, just near this building right here, the L-shaped red roof building. There's like a little park down there to the side. And this may not be it. Can we find another L-shaped building in this town? Because if we cannot, we're actually going to assume that this is the area, and for some reason I'm just not lining up the two well. Because we do know that this is Glishkova. And so if we can find, yeah, I think that's actually the area. Like the, wait a minute, hang on. The little park. Well, there's a little road right there, and there's a, wait a minute. It's this L-shaped building over here. Okay, hang on. Let me make sure that that lines up. Is there a taller building? Oh my goodness, Matthew, we were right on the money. We were literally just next door this entire time. So to geolocate this for y'all accurately and show y'all the process that I went through to come up with this. So if I was to take this, can we rotate this map, Matthew? Is this possible?
I don't think you can on this one. I think it's disabled for some reason.
Dag nabbit, I hate that. Wait a minute, hang on. Maybe, nope, it's not going to happen. I hate to say that because to actually geolocate this accurately and make it a lot easier to back this up with proof, I would have to spin this thing a 180 because this drone is actually looking from the north side of Glishkovo south in this area. So if we look at this, you can see the red-shaped the L-shaped red-roofed building right here on this side of the road. You can also see this little park area right here, and this tree, well, actually these two trees closest to the main road right over here. And you can see in this clip, there's those two trees right there, the L-shaped building, and you can also see this amalgamation of weird sheds and warehouses and stuff right here that you can see right over here on the right side of the screen. And you can also see that taller building, some kind of an apartment block, right over there a little bit further down the street, which lines up with this building right here. So the airstrikes that we saw appeared to have been knocking out a Russian position that had been set up right here within the town. So this is exactly the spot that this was hit on. Now, I gotta say, I'm really lucky finding that quickly. Usually geolocations done on stream without any preparation beforehand actually go fairly badly. So I'm really happy that I was able to find that off of the bat. So now that we know this, let's measure how much damage was caused and what buildings actually were hit. So we can see that one of the buildings in the center compound, it appears that it was this one right here, was completely obliterated in the first bomb. The next one landed a little bit off to the side, actually somewhere out here, maybe into some motor pool that we really didn't see that well on the video, but it does look like some cars were parked in this area when the satellite picture was taken earlier, and it wouldn't be out of the question to assume that the Russians would use this as a motor pool for vehicles for folks that were inside of the staging area at that time. We can then see another bomb literally obliterate this building right here. I have no idea why, but they hated that building and they wanted it gone. So props to them. They hit that thing dead on the nail. And then we can see a second bomb hit there, suggesting that this building had a great deal of importance. We don't know what was in it, but it got slammed pretty damn hard. And then finally, we can see another bomb. Sadly, the geolocation on this one. Wait a minute. Actually, we can tell really well. It's right over here. It's around this building because we can see that it's right near the road. We can see the apartment block over there. And so it appears that they also hit this building as well, this green-roofed building right here. So it looks as though this entire little compound sandwiched in between the L-shaped building and the green roof house was being slammed by Ukrainian guided bombs. A pretty prolific amount. In fact, this building was hit twice by by laser-guided bombs, most likely, or GPS-guided bombs, one or the other. And it really begs the question, what did the Russians have in that specific building in the compound that had to be stricken twice? We really don't know a lot of information on exactly what was inside of this compound. I wish we did, but the hits were pretty accurate in targeting specific buildings, showing that the Ukrainian armed forces had a decent deal of information about what was going on in this area and exactly what buildings to strike to try and cause the largest amount of damage. This may be
It
showing
was
that...
probably the Russians' prized vodka stash. If I had to take a stab at it, that's probably what it was.
Man, I'm telling you what, man. You know, hang on, let me go see if I can pull this up. Ivan the Terrible and his son. Yeah, here we go. Dude, when the Russians went into the building and they saw that the vodka had been blown up, they clutched the vodka just like this picture of Ivan the Terrible and his son.
Oh man. Ivan the Terrible, man. We went out a terrible way. Jeez, man. This is like NSFW almost.
I mean, not really. It's a painting, so it's technically art. I have to put that out.
I'm joking.
But I have to put that out there, man. You know I have to. But beyond that, if y'all didn't know about that painting, it's actually one of the most famous paintings that came out of the Russian Empire because it was made by an artist that was depicting a moment when Ivan the Terrible, who was a pretty crappy person overall and really didn't appreciate his family, interestingly enough, he actually went and got into an argument with one of his sons and struck him over the head so hard he ended up killing him. And so that painting is actually the aftermath of him striking his son over the head in the fight, and he's clutching him and regretting the action that he made. Pretty wild, right? I mean, it would be crazy if anyone ever did that in real life. But beyond that, still...
Someone go and get that picture right there of that Ivan the Terrible fella being clutched with the NSFW stuff going on. And someone like Photoshop in like a, what's that, a Smirnoff bottle in his place or something like that. Yelling and screaming, no, he can't go. We have to have our vodka.
Man, you know, he's sitting there going, no, these hands, I made them. Palms outreach, praying for salvation, you know, something like that. It's like, you know, it was
fiending for the vodka,
dude. Like fiending. Aw, man.
Oh yeah, just like him.
At 420 friendly or something like that. But anyways, moving on from that little bit of news, we did get to see that some of the floating pontoons near to the city of Glishkovo are getting attacked, according to the information by HIMARS. Now, a lot of people wouldn't believe this post right here, but we do have some really interesting information to show about this. The pontoon bridge, south of, well, actually east of Glishkovo, it still exists right there. You can actually see it. Very faintly, but it's right where my mouse cursor is. It's actually sitting right on top of it, so when I move it, maybe y'all can see that little bridge that they set up right there. You can also see the knocked out bridge span over here on the Glishkovo bridge, showing that this is a very recent satellite picture. We then can see that later on in the day, the Ukrainians were slamming this thing with cluster munitions. Here's a picture of where they geolocated that this is the bridge crossing in question. We can see that it's crossing from the north side of the bridge on the right side of the screen and exiting onto the south side. We can see Ukrainian cluster munitions landing pretty close nearby and absolutely peppering that location on the bridge. Trying to knock out the bridge, cause damage to it, and also damage to any of the vehicles that are passing through. So pretty interesting.
Also, real quick, gotta point out, look at that. We got a cartoon honey badger right there on the emblem. I love to see it. That's actually... That is a honey badger, correct? It looks like it from my screen.
It is! It's a honey badger!
I love to see it, man. It's been a good minute since we've seen one of those.
Man, I'm telling you what, it has been a hot minute. The honey badger is actually the official animal of the LSA. A lot of people know the marmot, but the honey badger is actually the official animal. So pretty cool to see that still. Love to see that the honey badger made a mark out there in the world. And I just got to say, it is incredible stuff. And we will never be able to thank enough Avogadro's number for making that honey badger for us way back in the day. But moving on
Indeed.
Indeed. But moving on from that, it does appear that the Ukrainians are trying to attack the few pontoon bridges that are in the area and make sure to cause a pretty decent amount of damage to the Russian forces that are on the southern side of the river. We also got to see a little bit of picture evidence today of the damaged bridge at Kursk. We actually get to see either satellite, it's actually a satellite picture, from Airbus, sponsored by Airbus. And we got to see that the bridge is damaged. It appears that an entire span may be in very bad shape, very bad condition, and we can see right here that they highlighted that a good part of the bridge span has warped and is caving in downwards towards the river, confirming that this bridge is unusable and it has been knocked out. So pretty cool to see that in actual picture and video evidence, because now we can say more than just the claim that the Ukrainians made that they destroyed it. We can actually show hardcore proof that the Ukrainians have destroyed that bridge and it has now been rendered unusable to Russian forces that are in this area. From what we still...
I do have a question. I do have a question for you real quick, though.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, I'm curious, between the bridges being taken out, the bridges in Kursk that we've been seeing taken out, we've seen, I think, 3 pre-war bridges get knocked out by Ukraine so far. Is that more significant at the moment than knocking out the Kerch bridge that goes to Crimea, or which one's more significant?
Well, I would actually have to argue, and this is going to be very weird sounding for a lot of people, and I'll explain how this kind of works, at least in my logic. Knocking out these 3 small bridges is actually more important than knocking out the Kerch Bridge right now. While the Kerch Bridge is a lot larger, it can handle a much higher tonnage, and not only that, it is by far more famous than these 3 bridges. The Ukrainians aren't really conducting any major offensive actions right now heading towards Crimea that would make cutting off a supply and reinforcement line a really big ordeal in the big picture and really screw over the Russians, at least in a very short-term picture. So it's not really that big of a deal if the Kerch Bridge was attacked or knocked out right now, because there's no ongoing pressure in this area to really make that loss heavily felt, at least by the Russians, for that matter. They probably could just figure out a way to make the supplies that are there last, or find a way to at least keep a minimal amount flooding in, and then just ration the supplies that are currently there. In this area, however, it's a completely different story. The Russians, because of the ongoing battle in this area, they have to be able to keep up a constant stream of supplies heading across the river and to the Russian forces at Glushkovo. If they can't, those forces are going to end up dying off really quickly, because ammunition does not last forever. It actually takes a very huge effort behind the lines to keep a continuous stream of ammunition going to the Russian frontline forces to be able to even allow them to shoot at the Ukrainians. Then there is the fuel concerns, and fuel is incredibly extensive as far as the amount of logistical capabilities that are needed to supply a modern motorized force at minimum with their basic fuel needs. That is a massive amount of upkeep logistically that has to be done, that requires a large amount of bridges, or at least some usable bridges, to be viably an option for these supply forces. Then right now, all of the major bridges have been knocked out, and the few pontoon bridges, the 1 or 2 that have kind of been set up at the moment, are under endless amounts of artillery fire, meaning that there really isn't any safe or viable option of getting supplies up and down the Reka Seym and to the Russian forces on the southern side. So as far as it's concerned for the strategic picture for Ukraine, these 3 little bridges right now are actually more important to knock out and ensure that they stay knocked out than the Kerch Bridge, simply because there is an ongoing offensive in this area, and knocking out those bridges in this very short-term picture is making a massive big picture difference in the long run, especially in how they'll be able to hold this flank on into the future.
I would have to agree with that, indeed.
Yes.
Also, I was reading somebody's chat, by the way. I wasn't focused on it. I was getting distracted with someone saying something, but go ahead.
Oh, it's quite all right, Matt. It was quite all right. But beyond that, we have been hearing, though, Matthew, speaking of the bridges being knocked out and how bad of a situation this is, Putin is getting apparently really concerned about what's going on in the Kursk Oblast. Wildly concerned, because we saw that he was down in Chechnya still today. He's like taking a multi-day vacation in Chechnya. The craziest thing ever, taking a vacation. Wild, right? But moving on from that, we did get to see that apparently Putin was at a range today and watching one of Kadyrov's kids go through the rifle drill, which I'm not going to lie, Matthew, that kid wasn't really that impressive with the rifle drill. It was kind of like an amateurish kind of a execution to that. Of like, I don't have the video for it. Just trust me, bro, on that. It wasn't that good. But Putin put on some protective headset today to make sure that his ears, his precious little ears, weren't hurt by the gunfire. And the way he wore them, I'd be damned. It was so bad they deleted
they took
the
it
picture.
away.
They took it away.
What the hell?
What happened? Do we have it on Twitter? Do we?
I don't think I've reposted that. Also, is this the same kid of Kadyrov that was like teaching Russian guys how to be real men at like 16 years old or something?
Yes, that was that kid.
Oh, jeez. Oh, no.
And sadly, we didn't even get to see it. It's incredibly sad. It's terrible, because I'm trying to find it right now desperately on the second screen. It was hilarious, because Putin was wearing the headset upside down. Like, I don't even know what in the world he was doing, really. I gotta make sure
I'll see if I can look for it real quick. Let's see here. Let's see. Kadyrov's son. Putin. Let's see if I can spot it real quick on the Twitters. Let's see here. I'm seeing. Oh, here's the headline right here on Next. It says Kadirov's son Adam, who beat Nikita Zuravel in pretrial detention, posted a photo with Putin, and they look like two ghouls. Let's see here. I think I liked something for us. Go check the likes tab and see if this is it.
Gotcha. Oh, that's
might
it.
be it.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, you're a legend, Matthew. You're a legend. All right. So let me go click on it. Let me go get this thing up here. Oh, and they got the picture in HD. Yes, like, it's perfect. So he was in Chechnya today. He watched the kid go shooting. Like, I guess that's the best thing I can say. And so here's the clip. Wow, really cool. He goes running. He takes a long time.
He might be an iron marshmallow or something, but he's no chesty puller.
Whoa. Look at that boiler. Like, this kid really does have a boiler. Like, geez. Big congratulations, by the way, on him missing the first shot. What a man. Let's watch that again. That is a miss, 100%. He is like, what, Matthew, 20 yards away, and he misses like a torso-sized target out there? That's kind of sad.
It looks like it's almost point blank, and he's missing at that close a range.
Yeah, and he's got like a reflex sight, and this is stupid. But anyways, finally starts hitting him. He missed that shot as well, by the way, y'all. I mean, what a Chad. This guy is about as good as the actual Akhmat. And even, oh my god! Wait a minute! How many did he miss on that one? 2, 3? Damn!
Is he shooting dragon's breath or something? Why is it like shooting off so many sparks from this steel like that?
Oh, I forgot to share with you, Matthew. This is like, as far as like the range this guy is from these targets, this is like completely unacceptable in America. It's deemed unsafe because he's firing lead rounds or steel core rounds. I would assume, knowing how stupid they are, it's probably steel core rounds at steel targets. So as you know, Matthew, when steel hits steel at that kind of velocity, it creates shrapnel, and then shrapnel goes flying everywhere, and it's super hot, and it looks really weird, and it looks like you're firing dragon's breath, but no, that's actually shrapnel made of steel that's flying everywhere. And what's crazy is that at these kinds of ranges, it is so easy for it to ricochet right back at the shooter and end up injuring them pretty severely in some instances.
Well, I'll be damned, those Chechens are dumb.
Man, I tell you what.
And also, those plates are not big enough for him either. Like, it's only covering, like, literally, like, maybe some of the vital organs. Those plates are too small for that guy. That dude's like a tank wearing those small plates.
Man, it covers half of the liver, and the liver is all that matters in Russia because you have to be able to drink. So, let's watch him miss every shot on that last plate after nuking the other one because he's hitting it probably with the steel core round. So, let's watch this last one. My god, y'all. Like, he missed 2 rounds at like maybe 15 yards, 20 yards. I would be pretty ashamed of doing that in front of anyone. And so now it's time.
Oh, look, he's wearing them upside down, man. What the hell? Oh my god. What is he scared of messing up his hair? What hair?
Dude,
what
he doesn't even
look is
have
that
hair.
from Kadyrov?
Dude, why in the Kadyrov looks like he's going, that's how I shoot my hamburgers done. You know, he's about
He said, oh, that boy might serve as a dinner later. Ham sandwich with cheese.
Little piggy don't let me in. Or something like that.
Putin kind of looks a little scared, not gonna lie. Kind of looks like, oh shit, this is what we have? this is what I have left?
Oh my god, dude, I cannot believe it though. He wore the headset like that. That looks so stupid. I've seen people wear them like this before, but very rarely. But it's usually when they have a lot of hair, or usually, to be entirely honest with y'all, women wear headsets like that sometimes, so that way they don't mess up their hair. Putin ain't a woman, and he doesn't have hair, so why is he wearing the headset like that? That's just extra for no reason, you know? Like, it's like a, you know, this is the best way I can put it. It's like a bald person using conditioner in their shampoo.
Look over there.
Like, why?
Look over there in the comments. It says DJ 3 Day, and it has like a DJ version of him wearing the headphones upside down. Oh my god, man, it really does. He's like a wannabe DJ.
Oh my lord, this is so dumb. Oh my goodness, I've never seen anything like this before. This is ridiculous, actually. Like this, like if anyone respects Putin after this, I just don't know how, because this is the stupidest thing yet, really. Like, I've never seen anyone do this before that has so little hair, and he's doing it. Like, he has hair to care about. Like, he doesn't have hair to care. Like, we need to start the Care Hair Foundation for this guy, because apparently he cares about the hair way too much. But anyways,
I thought this guy was like, what was it, KGB trained. He walks with a certain gait and stuff like that because he wants to have his hand ready to go on his sidearm and stuff like that to pull it out real quick. But he doesn't know how to properly wear like ear protection for like shooting. Like, don't they train on firearms like in the KGB like regularly?
yeah, supposedly, you know, like with Makarovs and stuff. But I've never seen anyone wear a headset like that with no hair,
No.
ever. Like, ever. Like, this is wild. And also, Matthew, you know something else? If he had just tilted that ear protection set just a little bit higher where this part covered his eyes, he could have been the Russian Geordi LaForge from Star Trek The Next Generation. He really could have.
Oh yeah, he's got that earmuff visor. You know what I mean?
Man, he's got that Star Trek drip going on, you know what I mean? It's like it'd be dripping like lactose intolerance. But anyways, moving on from that, and out of that wild piece of news, things were not going that well just a little bit north of Chechnya, inside the town of Proletarsk, in the Rostov-on-Don region, as the fire is still going. It's still going on. More fuel, more fuel tanks, that's the word for them, are continuing to explode in Proletarsk. And we can see the fire still burning 4 days after a Ukrainian drone hit this facility and caught the thing on fire. And so here's another clip of another tank blowing up at night. So here it is. We're going to be muting that, but we can see it turning into a bright star out there.
Oh, I'm going to call it right now. That entire facility is going to burn to the ground. Like, I don't think they're going to be able to stop it because I think there was like a total of like, I think like 70 tanks out there or something. There was like 40 on fire the other day. I think they're all going to burn to the ground.
I think they are, because, I mean, they just keep exploding. Each one of them just keeps getting too hot and they just explode. And no one's putting these things out.
Yeah, and also the Russian fire department, they're out there. I saw them on a video yesterday. They were recording the fire with their phones. They weren't like trying to put it out. They were just standing around watching it.
Dude, they said, whoa, big flame. And then they just started filming. Like, man, it's crazy. And then it started to die off, but the fire just keeps burning. Like, it just keeps on going. Here's a picture from the facility today that was taken as the fire continues to just eat the entirety of the facility. No one's stopping it. There's really no way for them to stop it. We understand that there's just absolutely no way. So this thing is just going to burn to the ground. And that's it. Like, there's nothing else to do. So the Ukrainians ended up hitting big on this one because the initial damage was minimal. Actually, it was only a few of the fuel tanks. But now we're seeing that they are knocking out just about every single fuel tank in the facility. About half of them have gone on fire and burned at this point. So pretty impressive stuff. And we love to see that kind of action going on inside of Rostov-na-Don. But moving on out of that, we are hearing that Putin is getting pretty freaking worried, like we were talking about initially, about what's going on in the Kursk Oblast. Things just don't look to be going on the uptrend. They're losing the Gleshkovo front. They are losing in pretty much every direction inside the Kursk Oblast around Suja. They are losing practically anywhere and everywhere that exists within the Kursk Oblast. The Russians are trying to see if the Chechens can somehow circumvent the draft restrictions that they put on themselves inside of Russia. But now it seems as though Putin isn't really even having a lot of faith in that, as we've started to hear a rumor today that Putin is considering a new wave of mobilization to try and deal with what's going on inside of the Kursk Oblast, because there really is no other way for them to deal with it at this point, because they just don't have enough combat power to move around and enough bodies to throw at everything anymore. So a lot of people are wondering, will that new wave of mobilization happen soon? And it seems like a lot of people are actually believing it will. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well? Is it going to happen, or is it not?
So on mobilization, Putin is talking about that according to the Russian media outlet Meduza, which is clearly a state-run or at least a state-affiliated organization inside of Russia. It looks like they're talking about mobilizing a new wave of Russians. So 68% of the audience said yes, Putin will call a new mobilization soon, while 18% said no, he will only call it if Russia gets more desperate, and 8% said I need more intel on this. And honestly, I'm not sure how much more desperate Russia could get at this point, because right now they're fighting a losing battle inside of Ukraine. They can't gain any territory over there, and now they're fighting a losing battle on their home turf as well. So that's why you see Putin suddenly visiting Kadyrov over there in Chechnya. He's looking for more manpower. And also, we have not seen any signs of the North Koreans showing up. They were promised to show up, I think, like a month or so ago, and they've been nowhere to be found. So I'm not sure what happened to that, but Putin is indeed desperate for manpower. And right now, he is facing either he can mobilize people or he's not going to have enough troops to fight off the Ukrainians. So I think personally he will call it soon, probably within at least a month or two, not within weeks. I think it's probably months, but he will call it pretty soon. So I'm with the 68%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, a mobilization is probably going to be around the corner in the future, because the reality, this is one thing that people just keep on not getting. The Russians have limited themselves a great deal in the kind of manpower pool that they can draw from in this war. A lot. The Russians, well, originally Putin, to try and quell public pandemonium at the beginning of the war, pledged that no conscripts would ever be used to fight the Ukrainian armed forces. And so all of the conscripts, at least in any large form, were completely ruled out from actual combat. Now, do the Russians follow that completely? Absolutely not. We have seen conscripts fighting inside of Ukraine, and it has ended up becoming a little bit more normal, but they still try and keep that on the down low, and they don't send just an entirely conscript force into Ukraine, because the reality of the matter is that if they did that, there would be massive public backlash. So while they can get away with it on a brigade-to-brigade level, they can't do that on an entire army level inside of Ukraine. So for the large part, they can't call on the conscripts too much, because then the public's going to get pretty enraged, and then that's an extra headache and an extra loose end that has to be dealt with. So they don't really want to deal with that end. The other thing is that contract troops are always running thin. There's a lot of them that are dying inside of Ukraine and in Kursk right now. There's not that many more to pull from, and they're still trying to find a way, considering that they can't really use conscripts in mass. They can use them in smaller numbers, but not in mass, and they also are running out of contract troops, and it's harder and harder to get contract troops. They're trying to figure out, where in the world do we get troops from next? And the Chechens are offering tens of thousands. We don't know how many that really is. It could just be like 20,000 or 10,000 in reality. But that is a couple of brigades worth of pretty much useless troops. And the Russians probably know that as truth as well. Chechen troops are largely useless. They don't have any discipline. They don't have any morale, for that matter. They're largely just there to loot and steal from wherever they're at, so they may as well be counted as a non sequitur as far as the army is concerned. And so now they have to figure out what to do. And the only option they really have left is to pretty much just say, I lied, we're actually going to use nothing but conscripts, and then just start flooding conscripts into wherever there's a problem, and just eventually grind the Ukrainians down by just running people into gunfire. That's kind of like the last thing they have as an option. And right now, they're starting to consider that idea. And they're starting to go, well, if we start to run out of conscripts, we're going to need more of them. So let's start just mobilizing more people from the public, and they'll end up being the endless fodder we need for the meat grinder. And so I believe that that's probably the direction they're starting to move in. It's their last option, their last hope of having enough manpower to just keep on throwing at the Ukrainians. So I have a feeling it probably will happen. Much like Matthew said, it won't be happening like this week. It'll probably happen in weeks, maybe months in reality. And so with that,
Oh, and also one more thing as well. I've seen some people in the live chat saying this. I was under the impression that Medusa was a state-affiliated outlet, but I'm seeing several people say that they believe it's independent. So I don't know a whole bunch about it. I don't want to pin them wrong if they are independent. So I just want to make that clear. They appear to be probably independent. So I just want to say that. I got the impression they were state-affiliated from what I read on Twitter. So just wanted to correct that real quick. Didn't want to pin them wrong.
and so with that, we hope we addressed that fairly well. And also, another thing I'd like to say is that some people are asking, what about the North Koreans? I don't think they're ever going to show up. I think that was all just a bunch of theater that happened back in the day, because we've never seen any North Korean units arrive, and we've never gotten any indication that they actually are. So I think that they'll never be able to count on the North Koreans for any kind of armed support inside of the war. So pretty much out of the question at this moment. And also, someone asked, well, what would happen if a North Korean soldier surrendered? Well, what happens is that they become a part of the hostile class of the Songbun because they betrayed the great leader and they betrayed the Kim family. And, they didn't show enough loyalty and devotion. They didn't either fight to the death, and they ended up being captured by the enemy, showing that apparently they were scared more for their own lives than their actual care and devotion for the Juche and the Kim family, and so they would be treated as a hostile class. They probably would end up getting eventually exchanged, maybe, for some prisoners that the North Koreans may capture, and then the North Koreans would end up putting those North Koreans that were returned either into prison camps, gulags, or probably execute them for treason against the nation. That's usually how it would go for the North Koreans. They're very, very strict on people falling out of their control. If you ever get returned or repatriated into North Korea after you escape North Korea, usually the punishment for that is death, or it is hard labor for the rest of your life. And also the other thing that a lot of people have to consider, there probably wouldn't be that many North Korean troops that would surrender. You have to remember that the Songbun system, which is their caste system, it's made up of 3 different levels. It does not allow for one person to do something and the sins of the father are not brought down onto the rest of the family. The Songbun system dictates that the punishment lasts for 3 generations. So anything that you do wrong will reflect badly on your entire lineage for 3 generations. So if you screw up and you get put in a gulag, your child is going to be in the gulag as well with no chance of getting out, and so will your grandchildren as well. They will also be stuck in the gulag and will have no way out. Then, say what, Matthew?
I said, damn.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking horrendous. And then, by the 4th generation, their children actually will be once again in the in the wavering class, which is the middle class of the caste system in the Songbun, and they will be allowed to return to kind of having a normal-ish life, but it won't be a highly luxurious life or a comfortable life or anything along those lines. I was interestingly enough, great question about the North Koreans. I was actually watching a very interesting documentary today. A huge shout out to Lad Bible, by the way. I think Matthew's watched some of their stuff. They do amazing documentaries with folks. I say it's like top level quality. They just let these people tell their stories. And I was actually watching one on a North Korean citizen who defected, what the North Koreans would call defected. He escaped to China twice, wildly enough. He actually somehow did not get executed on his return, and so he escaped again out of the country and into China. Again, he ended up near Shanghai, near some American school that was being run in Shanghai, and they ended up creating such a scene at the school that a 13-year-old child at the school wrote to a local journalist at a paper about what had happened, and literally pretty much the entire world came together to lobby the Chinese for this guy's release. And so he ended up actually being deported from China to the Philippines, and then from the Philippines he ended up traveling to the UK and becoming a citizen. But I've got to tell you, if y'all actually want to hear the story of a life of a North Korean, he had a wild story. It was a very wild one. It was very sad to hear as well, because what's crazy, Matthew, is that he ended up running up on some like low-level Chinese provincial market or something along those lines, like right across the border in some unknown town. And he said that it was so mind-blowing, like the exotic smells of like all these foods that he had never smelled before. The fact that there were even electrical lights, like he said, all of it was just insane. And at that moment, he had known that everything that they had said in North Korea about North Korea being the best and most advanced country in the world was a flat-out lie, because this provincial market had more in it than the best markets in North Korea would ever have.
Yeah, I've actually watched that same interview with that fellow right there. I think it was like shortly after he escaped or something like that. I think the North Koreans went back and really like shored out the defenses around the border and stuff like that, so that people couldn't escape out of North Korea. That's my understanding as well. But a lot of the people in North Korea, like, they have no clue what the outside world's like, because it's like a hermit kingdom. But some people will get their hands on illicit like USB thumb drives and stuff like that, and CDs. And if they have a way of playing it, they can see like some Western cartoons and things like that, and get an idea of how cut off from the rest of the world they really are. And that's how some North Koreans like first realize, like, we're living in like a fantasy world over here, and the rest of the world actually living life like outside of here. And that's how some of them realize it, and then they try to escape. But most times they don't actually get out because they've shored up the border so much.
Yeah, it's a really sad thing when you think about it, because that guy pretty much equated living in North Korea to practically living in prison. It's a prison country for the large part. And I also saw someone say something about another North Korean escapee. This person is actually very famous in America, and they do have some interesting stories. But I've heard lately, and I'm not saying that I believe or don't believe this, but I have been hearing some controversies surrounding, and I'm sure you know this person as well, Matthew, Yeonmi Park. Some people are saying that her stories, some of her stories, aren't necessarily true. And it's not just anyone who's saying that, it's other North Korean escapees. Apparently, one of them actually knew her and said that she was of a higher class family and actually ended up living a fairly comfortable life in North Korea. I don't know if those claims are true, but it did start to throw in a little bit of questionability to me. Is that, like, are these stories really true or not? Because she also, unlike many North Koreans who just tell the stories of the horrors in North Korea and say it's terrible, she started to go in a political route with her messaging and started to try and, you know, kind of move into the politicized route, which, you know, generally to me, whenever I see anyone do that, I always think there's some kind of an ulterior motive to telling those stories instead of just for the sake of it, like this poor guy did on Lad Bible. Like, you could tell his story was legitimate. The guy was crying all the way through it. You could tell that he just had nothing but sorrow about everything that was happening in North Korea, everything that happened to him and the people around him, and nothing but hope and joy for the little bits of humanity he saw throughout his ventures, like with the missionary in northern China, and also his time in prison in China as well. He actually saw more humanity in a Chinese international prison than he ever saw in North Korea as a whole. So I would say it's a wild nation. Like, it's not a wild nation in a fun way. It's a wild nation in a horrific way. It's a nation of nightmares for the large part, for really everyone living in it, and everyone's got to wake up and live a nightmare, which is pretty horrific when you think about it. But still, I hope that.
And also, speaking of that nightmare as well, like, the nightmare continues, because what even happened to all the troops that were supposed to go to Russia to help out with that? Like you said, we don't even know where they are. Or it seems like it was just a bunch of hype and it was really no substance behind it. But I was going to also ask as well, not only are the North Korean troops missing, but also has Wagner actually showed back up to Russia yet? Because they were also supposed to be helping out, but I haven't really seen them on the front lines very much.
I haven't really seen the Wagner either, actually. Thinking about that, I had to think for a quick second. I've never seen them. I've never seen any proof of them actually on the front lines, to be honest with you, Matthew. I don't know where they are. Like, I don't know if they ever even returned from Africa, to be honest from you.
I saw the picture of the Wagner mobile. It was like some Lada that they had like wrapped with the Wagner logo. That was there in Kursk, but there were no actual like large units of Wagner there. So I'm not sure if maybe they're like, you know, still needing more time to get to Russia to be able to fight, or are they simply not showing up, or if there's hardly any Wagner left. I'm not really sure, but it seems like all the reinforcements that Russia was asking and looking for, they're not showing up and they're not following through. So, you know, that's why, like I said, Putin is over there in Chechnya. He's looking for the Akhmat group, which is a pitiful group that basically caused the Kursk region to get invaded by letting the Ukrainians cross the border and then basically running off. They're looking to that same group that was cowards to try to defend the territory. So it's just desperate. And I just don't see any end in sight. I said this yesterday and the night before as well. I don't see any end in sight for this invasion into Russia. Like, I don't know how they're going to stop this.
I really don't either. Like, everywhere the Russians turn to try and find manpower to shore up that area, they just never find viable manpower. Like, either the Wagner disappears, we don't even know where they are. The North Koreans are nowhere to be seen. We don't even think they ever left the country. The Akhmat is literally useless. Like, they proved that in the opening of the offensive, and they continue to prove it pretty much every single day the offensive goes on. So there really is no way for the Russians to deal with the manpower problem at all, really, or at least effectively. But still, it is pretty interesting. Also, I've seen that some people say, you know, oh, you know, Yeonmi Park is really bad. Yeonmi Park is really good. I don't know. I will say that apparently, like, if I remember what I heard correctly, there was a lot of questionability brought up about her story years after she started telling it, because another North Korean escaped from North Korea. They found out that she was out there in the world, you know, doing her thing and saying her thing here in America. And then that escapee, if I remember correctly, actually knew her growing up and said that her story was untrue. I think because they said that she never witnessed a public execution, because the last time a public execution happened in their area of the country was years before they were both even born, or something along those lines. It was something like that, which started to throw in a little bit, at least in my mind, of questionability, because all North Koreans that escape North Korea largely all agree that the country sucks. And you really don't see a lot of them disagreeing with each other's stories. And so it's a little bit weird when you hear another North Korean escape and then they start claiming that another one's stories are just woefully untrue. And you know that they're not lying about that, because why would they escape if it was sunshine and rainbows in North Korea? They agree it sucks, but not to that extent. Apparently some of the stories maybe, and I'm not saying they are, maybe embellished, who knows, but you know, I don't live in North Korea. The stories could be true. The stories could be false for all I know. I'm not going to try and discredit anyone's stories that lived in a hellhole, you know, but there is some controversy around it a little bit. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, before we move on into the rest of the news inside the Kursk front, we do have a couple of interesting questions to cover. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping into our first Super Chat segment of the night, we have a very generous $120 donation from a longtime channel legend. It's Sylvester the Cat. Thank you very much, Sylvester, for that support. And they said, hello, Matt and Enforcer. And hello, Sylvester. He said, will Ukraine capture the intersection of the E-105 and the E-38 south of Kursk before the Rasputitsa? And I appreciate you both, and always watching, and Leaf Spring Tanker.
And thank you so much for that massive support, Sylvester the Cat, an absolute legend of the channel. I got to thank you massively once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. That is incredibly kind of you. And I got to thank you massively for helping this channel to keep on running and helping it to keep rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And so a huge thanks to you once again. I would have to say that capturing the intersection of the E-38 and the E-105 is probably going to end up proving to be very arduous, if not difficult. This is where I'm expecting that the Russians will make probably one of their largest stands, or largest defensive efforts, will be right on the outskirts of Kursk. They probably will create some sort of defensive perimeter inside of Diakonovo, because Diakonovo is a very long town stretching from the north to the south, and it poses a very formidable defensive line because it's a built-up area that troops can actually build up in and try and prepare a defense on. So I would say catching the intersection is probably going to be pretty difficult, at least in my opinion. But the Ukrainians will eventually, in my belief at this point, end up controlling a decent amount of the E-38 and the E-105, so effectively completely rendering both of the highways useless. It's just that they won't probably capture that intersection there due to the heavy Russian defense that is expected at this point, because you know, in reality, Kursk is a major city. It's a hero city at that. So not only is it a major city strategically, and as far as the morale of the country is concerned, it's also a major city as well. Its capture would be a huge blow to Russians across the entirety of the country. So I would say the capture of the E-105 and E-38 intersection for those reasons will probably be very far out there. It may not ever really happen. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for that massive support, and thank you for really appreciating and always watching Sylvester the Cat, and I got to thank you for the massive support as well. We say this so much, and it's entirely true, that the viewers themselves are the folks who help this channel to keep on running. There are no sponsors. There are no ads on these streams. The only thing that helps us to be able to do this is our full-time job and focus on this each and every day is all the folks who are behind the screens right now, the thousands of y'all, nearly 10,000 of y'all tonight actually, who are continuously supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. If it was not for folks like you, Sylvester the Cat, we wouldn't be able to keep up this good work. We wouldn't have the ability to pay the bills in the background we have to pay to be able to keep this thing going. And so I got to give you a huge thank you so much once again. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. We wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And I thank you so much for asking a really interesting question as well, and also being an old guard of this channel, Sylvester. You've been around forever, as long as BC Skyman, as long as many others. And I got to thank everyone who's always been around with us for an incredibly long time, because it is such an honor to think that we've been able to be one of the main voices of news for many of y'all for years at this point. Like if a child was born the very day this war in Ukraine began, they are about 3 years old at this point. They are getting really close to getting into kindergarten, which is just insane to think about. Like, that's crazy. We've been on air for that long, and for folks like you, Sylvester the Cat, We have been the voice of news for folks like you for that long. That's crazy to think about. And I cannot tell you all enough how honored and humbled we are to be in that kind of a position for hundreds of thousands of people at this point. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, it's like, wow, 3 years. Well, actually, I got to give a technical caveat. The channel will be 3 years old in about a week and a half. Like, that's pretty crazy in itself. But the war is about 2 years and 8 months old, I believe, somewhere around there. So it's technically not 3 years, but we're really starting to round our way out to being around 3 years. So that's like, that is so crazy to think, Matthew. We've been doing this for 3 straight years. Most YouTube channels don't even survive one.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. We've been doing this for a while. It feels like we just started yesterday, to be honest, though. So I don't know. It's just when you're having fun and you're doing something you enjoy, it goes by fast, and I think that's what's happened here.
And I would completely agree with that. And also, thank you so much once again. Huge thanks to you, Sylvester Cat, for the support. I hope that does address that once again incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, Enforcer, by the way, just a piece of breaking news as well. I'm seeing here, it looks like some major explosions happening. It looks like maybe at the Marinovka airport in the Volgograd region of Russia.
No.
It looks like it has been struck. We have some pictures of that right now. And also, I'm not sure here, but I think I'm seeing maybe new drone footage or footage from a drone here of Moscow being hit as well. So take a look at the top of the Twitter page. This is looking pretty interesting.
Oh my goodness. This is actually pretty interesting. So let's go to Volgograd, and let's go to the Marinovka airfield. Marinovka in Volgograd, and then we can find it from there. So here's Marinovka. The airfield's down here. So what was at this airfield? What the hell is that picture? Like, I want to click on it. Wait a minute, we're going to have to click on it and find out. What the hell is this picture? Like, what is this? This is the picture that pops up from Marinovka.
They got that mink and that cheetah.
Man, I'm telling you what, you got a couple of cougars chasing some ducks. But anyways, moving on from that in that first laugh, we can see the Marinovka airfield a little bit further south. It appears that this is actually a pretty fleshed out airfield, at least for Russian terms. They have some Su-34s stationed here, at least when the satellite was taken. They have some Su-24s as well. And then they have covered sheds, Matthew. This is revolutionary for the Russians. I've never seen a cover, like a hardened shelter of any kind, even a soft cover shelter like this, ever. So this is actually revolutionary for the Russians. But this will probably all be for naught, because it appears that the airfield is massively on fire and was probably blown up tonight. This happened about 30-40 minutes ago while we were live on air. Goodness gracious, will you look at those flames. Looks like they may have hit a couple of aircraft or some logistical hubs on the airfield. Pretty nice to see. Hopefully we'll get some more information on that here in the future. And not only that, we got to see more drones flying towards Moscow. Muchlik!
Летит ПВО, блядь, летит, пиздец, хохлы, пидорасы ебаные!
All right.
Bro, hold it down. You're waking people up like more than the drone is. This dude's louder than the weapon coming in.
Dude, he said,
Calling all towns and villages, beware! You better lock up your doors today!
it's just some crap like
Man,
that.
the people woke up and said, "Shut the hell up!" They didn't even care about the drones. Like, just shut that loud man up.
Dude, you literally heard this, man, if you were in another house.
Oh my god, it's a drone! Oh my god!
Like, it's like, dude, calm down. It's like, damn, it's like, it's a drone. It's not bombing you. Calm down. But still, let's say another drone attack is happening on Moscow right now, so we'll be trying to see what's happening with that. But this guy was excited, man. I think this is the most excitement he's ever had in his life.
Летит ПВО, блядь, летит, пиздец, хохлы, пидорасы ебаные!
Man, he's going off almost like that guy was in the Middle East when we saw that one guy running toward the truck and he was yelling and screaming out the window like crazily. It's kind of like that.
Man, that guy in Al Hidaydah driving through and he went, you know, so all that stuff. It's like, bro, it's like, calm down. But still, looks as though this airfield has been hit pretty heavily down near Marinovka, and also it does seem as though Moscow's under attack again, although we haven't heard any reported explosions and splash points for these drones yet, so we'll be waiting for that. But still, thank you for sharing that breaking news, Matthew, because I did not even know that was a thing. Huge shout out to Enforcer Matt again, once again, for scouring for the news while we're live on air.
I'm scouring, man. I'm telling you what, I'm like that Mr. Clean sponge, man. I'm scouring.
Man, scouring, man, for real. But with that, we are on to the next one. A huge shout out once again before we do to Sylvester the Cat for the massive support and also being not only an old guard, but a Leaf Spring tanker as well, much like the legendary Jesus UCSB, who I haven't seen here for a little while, but hopefully he's still lurking. He's an American lurker. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to BC Skyman, who's also a massive channel legend, and he threw in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, BC, for that support as always. He said, Enforcers, enjoy your vacation, and you must have some downtime to recharge, and the LSA will always be here.
And I thank you so much for the kind words, BC Skyman. I thank you for wanting us to take a vacation. Hopefully we will be able to take a vacation really soon. You know, it would be nice to recharge and take some time to get a little bit of a breathing room, you know, to try and deal with things the way they go on out here in the world. It's always interesting how it goes. If only y'all knew what I was, Matthew knows kind of what I'm talking about. If only y'all knew what was going on sometimes in the background, y'all would be blown away. But I got to thank you so much once again for the massive support, BC Scamming, and wanting us to take a vacation. We are going to be taking one soon. We still got to iron down the time, but I feel like it's going to be incredibly fun. I haven't taken vacation in really 4 years, come to think of it, ever since I started running the channel, and even before that, hadn't really taken a vacation since the middle part of 2020, and I cannot wait to take one. It's going to be so much fun. Like, wherever we go, it will be very, very fun, and I cannot wait to get to it. We'll have a great deal of fun. We'll be making sure, though, to keep uploading during that time. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, come on, relax. No. We want to make sure to keep covering the news for y'all. So while we may not be able to run streams during those few days, we will be making sure to keep regular uploads of news going on so that way all of y'all can keep on seeing what is happening out there in the news, at least in short form. But still, gotta thank y'all massively once again for wanting us to take a vacation. I gotta thank you so much, BC Scamming, for supporting the vacation fun. Not in a hot dog man kind of way, just, you know, wanting us to hopefully go out there and have a little bit of fun. And I got to thank you so much once again for always being here with us, BC Scamming, always supporting this channel, always having kind words and great things to say, because it means a lot to us, a lot more than a lot of people would think, because we don't really get a lot of, funnily enough, like in our personal lives, we don't really get a lot of praise for doing what we do and running this channel. Really, the only praise we get is from y'all yourselves, and it really means more to us than y'all could ever even imagine when people say incredibly kind words. We kind of give like a canned response these days because so many people say so many kind of things. We're like, oh, we appreciate it, but it really does mean an unbelievable deal to us because we owe y'all everything. I mean, not only do y'all have incredibly kind comments to say about this channel, about how we run it well and how the news is good and everything, y'all are the reason why we actually put so much effort and time into this thing. It's because of y'all. It's not because we just want to, you know, do good. It's because we know that y'all really do appreciate everything we do. And so we put in a lot of extra effort to make sure that when y'all are watching this, y'all really can enjoy it, because we want to give y'all our damnedest efforts to make sure that y'all are enjoying this news each and every single day. And so I got to give you a huge thank you once again, BC Skyman, for that incredible support. It is folks like you who help this channel to keep on running, and thank you for saying the LSA will always be here, because the LSA will never die. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news we have for the night.
All right, so the last one of the segment is going to go to LSA Rocks, who's another channel legend, and a huge shout out for that $100 support, and we appreciate it very much from LSA Rocks. And he said, LSA all the way.
And thank you so much for the massive support in LSA all the way, LSA Rocks. And thank you so much for being one of those folks who have always been backing the channel and always have been saying kind things and helping us out and helping us to keep this thing rolling, because it's amazing to know that there's a massive community behind this channel that's always backing us up and supporting us every single step of the way. Sometimes things get a little bit tough, but nevertheless, the Leaf Spring Army continues to push on forward. Along with us, we really get to kind of be a part of the whole Leaf Spring Army moving forward every day. Y'all kind of help us to move forward every single day. And I got to thank you so much once again, LSA Rocks, for being a part of that, and also being a huge part of the Lee Spring Army, an amazing member of this community, and thank you for saying LSA all the way, because it's amazing to know that there's so many people dedicated to the cause of the Lee Spring Army, being a pro-Western, pro-American organization looking to further American and Western interests across every corner of the globe. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are now moving on out of this question segment and back into the news, specifically in the Bryansk area, because we did get to hear a supposed rumor that a breakthrough has happened in this area. We have absolutely no confirmation beyond someone reporting this, so we don't know if it's true or not. We don't have any video or picture evidence, but we want to make sure to put that out there just in case if something did happen. But moving on from that and back down into the Kursk area, we do have a lot more news coming out of this area. In Koronivo, we did get to see that more Russian prisoners have been taken, and they made it a trap remix video with sick edits. So you don't really get to see the prisoners all too much, but you can see them being processed right here a little bit as this absolutely nauseating music video goes on in the background. Wonderful stuff. But that's the end of the clip right there. Really neat to see. And moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we did get to hear by the British Ministry of Defense reports that apparently the Russians have put the Space Force onto the front line. According to a report by the Russian investigative outlet Vizhny story, one of the units deployed to defend against the Ukrainian incursion in the Kursk Oblast is the specialized motor rifle regiment formed unusually of aerospace forces personnel. According to the report, the motor rifle regiment was formed in May of 2024 and has been subordinated to the Russian northern grouping of forces. Reportedly, personnel forming the VKS Man Motor Rifle Regiment include those previously in specialist roles such as early warning radar operators and at long-range aviation heavy bomber regiments. Diverting personnel from these previously high-priority areas likely demonstrates continuing personnel shortages. By employing them in an infantry role, they're also being misused, which could even reduce Russian capability to retake territory in the Kursk Oblast. Russia continues to develop new units and recruit more personnel to sustain its mass attritional warfare approach against Ukraine. The high casualty rates that result mean that Russia needs to continuously replenish frontline infantry personnel, which almost certainly continue to limit Russia's ability to generate higher capability units. So now we got the guys from the Russian Air and Space Force out there on the front lines fighting its infantry. Boy, howdy, they must be having a fun time, right? But moving on from that and down towards the area of MeanwhileUkrainian, we also got to see some vehicles in the area, a T-72E and a Polish MRAP. Pretty cool, it's actually an Oncilla MRAP, so that's pretty neat to see. Great to know they're using those out there. But moving on from that and into the rest of the news that we also have a little bit of news coming from the area of Bolshoi Sadatskoy, where we got to see some Russians getting bombed by the 225th. Hit them. And so here's the clip. We can see the Russians scurrying around down there, and boy, do they go. And we can see them getting hit pretty hard. Oh!
Why does that courtyard look like the neighborhood junkyard or something? No, it's just like the neighborhood pull apart.
Man,
who's this guy that keeps popping up?
I have no idea. I have no idea at all. Like, I don't even know who that is. But with that, that's the end of the clip. But still nice to see that they're hitting the Russians wherever they can. Moving on from that, we also get to see that the influx of refugees into the city of Kursk continues, as around 90,000 Russians have been displaced from the offensive inside of Kursk.
Очень большое количество.
Pretty wild stuff. They just keep coming on in. And so with that, we're now moving out of the Kursk area, and we're now moving on into the rest of the Ukraine war news. And starting off with our location unknowns, we actually don't have any today, except for the Russian casualty report, and it was pretty high once again. And so here's the clip. Oh!
Oh, man, they went from all those bombcats yesterday to 2 bombcats, but damn, the other losses are crazy, man. They're crazy. Tell us more.
Man, 1,210 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 21 APCs, 79 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 60 artillery pieces, 38 drones, 4 cruise missiles, 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 2 bombcat skid steers. It was all in all a pretty impressive day for the Ukrainian armed forces, and it does appear that they are continuing to inflict a really high amount of damage. onto them Russian forces throughout the entirety of the area and making sure to prove to them that the Ukrainian army is the best in at least Ukraine and also the best in Russia at the moment as well. But moving on from that and into the Vovchansk area, we also got to see something a little bit interesting. Many of y'all will know that the Russian offensive into Vovchansk happened a long time ago. But on that offensive, there's a house about right here, and it's on a little turn in the road. So we saw that apparently one of the Russian MTLBs at the earlier part of the offensive was driving full speed. The driver wasn't paying attention, and the MTLB crashed into the building full speed, collapsing the house on top of it, and leaving it stuck there permanently throughout the rest of the campaign. So this MTLB, from what we know, has actually been stuck in this house for about 4 months now, at a minimum.
That's crazy.
Krasse. I'm telling you, man, it's krasse. But moving on from that and out of that little bit of news in the Vovchansk front, it's now time for us to move a little bit further on down and into Chasiv, where we got to see the 3rd Brigade fighting in the area. Check this out. So I'm going to get this clip for y'all really quickly. And we're going to have to mute it, but we can see them loading up them shells into that SPG-9. And,
almost squishy.
Bunk. And again. Dang, thank you so much for the support, Andy L. and Hokey Redneck. We didn't get to call you out earlier. But we will be getting to y'all here in a little bit. We can see them now inside of a little bunker. We can see them driving through some sunflower fields. Pretty cool, actually. See them hopping out of the back of the truck. You now see the rest of the shells that they have ready to go. We see them firing the SPG-9. Pretty high rate of fire right here. I mean, dang, look at them go. You see them firing some more.
Bringing out the red light.
Man, red light, green light. And for the Russians, it's always red light. They got to get the hell out of there. I got to get out of here. But we can see them continue to fire. And man, they just keep laying it down. I mean, it looks like they really haven't moved from this position much either. And they just keep on putting down that heat. I mean, there's so much heat.
All that like puffy stuff. Like you see all those like little pieces of like white fluff like coming off the trees.
Aw, man, did you say white stuff? Aw, man.
Man, that did. Oh man, I would hate to see someone out there running around the ground trying to sniff the ground.
Oh man, I'd hate to drive all the way to some giant convention and then get flipped off when you tried to get in. I'd hate it. Like, I'd really hate it. But with that, we're now moving on from that clip. Pretty nice to see the 3rd Brigade using an SPG-9 in the area of Chasiv. And moving on from that and down towards the area of Pokrovsk, we also got to see at SU-27 firing some AGM-88 harms. It fired them both tandem. Look at that. That's actually a really cool picture right there. Pretty neat.
That is pretty sick, man. It looks like it's a sonic, like a missile or something. It looks like digital.
Man, it does kind of look digital. You're right. I agree with you. It does look
Yeah,
a little digital.
like a
Pretty
digital
cool.
picture.
Like a digital one. That's pretty cool. But moving on from that, we also got to see that the Russians were getting hit by the 47 Magura in some residential areas today as they hit that dubstep. Oh, look at them go. And there goes an anti-tank mine. And, oh, the whole house is gone. Goodbye, house. It was nice.
That explosion was so big it threw an error code on the drone.
Man, the 47 Magura is out here making sure that the property values stay rock bottom because they're down to the foundation out here at this point. But we can see another building on the side of the street burning as well. I don't think the Russians will be moving in here. This isn't really prime real estate anymore. And now they can see what it looks like at night. They're dropping another one. Oh, right through the roof. Oh, right through the roof again. Dang. Oh, there goes another anti-tank mine. Oh my goodness. Oh my lord, dude, those things are devastating.
Just wipe out the whole building. What type of yield is actually out of that explosive in an anti-tank mine? Is it like, do we have like a poundage on it?
It's actually not a lot. It's like 13 pounds or something like that.
Oh, that's not a lot at all. I thought you were about to say like 500 pounds or something. I was about to say, that's some crazy explosive power out of that small little mine.
Well, really, it's crazy because of how little explosive mass there is. It's only like 13 pounds, but the explosions would make you believe it was like several hundred pounds of explosive. It's pretty insane stuff in those anti-tank mines.
It's impressive to see. Turns it into just straight up ash, like when it hits something.
Man, I guess that house is a little ashy. But we can see that they're continuing to drop bomblets onto the forces down there. They're just hitting them. The Russians are in their tiny house and they're getting pounded.
You know, like if you're a soldier or something like that, and you're like in a bad position or something like that, they measure how bad you're screwed in poundage.
But you have to put extra emphasis on the P. You have to go, they measured in poundage. but with that,
Yeah.
but with that, we're now moving on from that clip. Pretty nice to see the 47th Brigade is still trying to hold back the Russians. They are making minimal advances in this area pretty much every single day. But still, you got to give it to the Ukrainians. They are giving it their all to slow them down and also inflict as much casualties as they can. Moving on from that and down to Novomykhailivka, we also got to see some Russians getting blown the hell up by the 72nd. We haven't seen a clip from the 72nd in a hot minute, but this is once again around the area of Novomykhailivka. The 72nd Mechanized has not moved on from this area for quite some time, and they are continuing to wipe out Russian forces that are seen in this area. Oh! Oh!
Oh, they're crawling.
Well, look at that crawler. Oh!
Oh.
Oh!
Here.
Oh! Oh my goodness. Good googly moogly. We see them slamming Russians out here near Novomykhailivka. I mean, they're giving them the works, really. And we see one Russian trying to shoot at the incoming drone. It's too late. The drone hits. My goodness. This is Bomblet Central down here with the 72nd. They love the bomblets.
Also, Enforcer, if you want to, I just got some videos in here fresh off the presses of the actual hit at the Marinovka military airfield. So I have a video of it now from, looks like a Russian.
Oh my goodness, really? Like we do? Oh, for real?
Yes, it's on our Twitter page.
Oh, dang. Let me go grab that really quickly. Everyone, we're going to go back to Marinovka over there in the Volgograd area. So let's take a look. Twitter, and let's go take a look at this. What happened in Romania? Oh, ew, yuck. But let's see here. So yeah, there we go. We got this. Is this from 12 minutes ago? Is this one from Visegrad?
Yes, it's Visegrad 24.
So there are the fires out there. There's several fires at that airfield now. You can distinctively tell there's at least 3.
And one large Astra.
Yeah, that's some huge Astra. And we also get to see that the fire map from NASA's FIRM satellite is confirming that it appears that the central area of the airfield has been hit pretty heavily. So let me get us out there, and it's down here. No. It's, you know what? Let me just cheat really quickly. There we go, Marinovka, and then it's right here. So I actually was looking in the right place the first time. I just doubted myself. And then there's the 2 cougars chasing the ducks. So we are in the right spot. So we can see that apparently the place that was hit the hardest, at least according to the FIRM satellite, was this area right here where there appears to be some kind of a storage facility or logistics hub to keep the airfield running. So looks as though the Ukrainians are once again trying to knock out the air wing ability to be able to conduct airstrikes in the first place by depriving them of their munitions. So pretty neat overall. And thank you once again, Matthew, for sharing this tidbit of information with us as we are live on air, because we are seeing a strike go down live, and it looks like it's going pretty freaking good. So with that, We're now moving on down into the Kherson area, where we also got to see that some Russian forces in Novokhovka were getting hit by hammers. They were getting held down and beaten with hammers. And check this out. We're going to be muting the rock, but here comes the hammers. Any second now. Oh, and the hammer's here. Is that the Alabama hammer?
Man, it threw those rocks. Look at that. It's like cluster bombs or something going off.
Man, crazy, man. It was throwing pieces of that house everywhere.
It went very quiet after that one hit.
It really did. That one rock created a little bit of a wake. But with that seeing the clip right there, really nice to see that they were able to knock that little building out in the area of Novokhovka. But at the moment, this area seems to be somewhat inactive, with the sparse Ukrainian strikes happening, trying to knock out some limited numbers of Russian forces. But we're not seeing the kind of activity we used to see back when the river campaign was going on, and the Ukrainians were holding areas across the river itself on the southern side that the Russians are on at the moment. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on down into the Middle East, because we actually have a little bit of info down here. I don't know if an Iranian strike is ever going to happen at this point. I'm actually kind of doubting it, to be entirely honest with y'all. But we did get to see that the United States has moved the USS Abraham Lincoln and its strike group into the area with the 5th Fleet. And so here is a clip from the flight deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln showing them operating the F-35s. This is one of the few aircraft carriers in the Navy that is currently completely outfitted with F-35s. So here's the clip. Man, look at that.
That's pretty sick, I gotta say.
Man, that is sick. Look at this.
And those have VTOL capabilities, don't they?
I think the Marines have the VTOL capability. I'm not really sure if the Navy got any of those. I think those were specifically for the Marines.
Interesting. I was wondering, I was like, why are they launching like this when they can just take off vertically? But I guess they're not.
You know what? Let us check, Matthew. Let us check that. The F-35 and its variants. So, I know that the F-35A, I think it was made for the Air Force. This is actually one in the, let's see here. Hell, I sadly do not know the roundel of that Air Force. So I'm going to just act like I knew, but I don't. But we're going to move on down into the specific variants and read about each one, at least a little bit, so that we can get an idea of which one's going where. So the testing, training. So let's see here. The F-35A and B, let's see, jointly developed tactics and procedures. The USAF began operating utility evaluation of the F-35A, so it does appear, based off of just quickly reading this, the F-35A was intended for the Air Force. The F-35B, from what we can read here, was introduced to the United States Marine Corps, at least at Eglin Air Force Base in 2012. And then alongside the U.S. Air Force, which was using the F-35A. And then the F-35C, where is that one? Let's see, the F-35C was introduced to the Strike Fighter Tactics Instructor Course, or Top Gun, which Top Gun is the Navy's course, in 2020, and the additional capabilities of the aircraft greatly revamped the course syllabus. So, going off of this, it does appear that this is a correct assumption to assume that the F-35A was for the Air Force, the B model was for the Marine Corps, and the C model was for the Navy. And I think the B model is the only one that has the VTOL capability. So, let's see, the F-35A, the F-35B, and then the Navy, the F-35C. And so it is correct. But let us make sure, let me double check that the F-35B is the only one that's VTOL capable. So, let's see here, the F-35s, blah, 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 da, 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 da. Yep, it looks like, at least as far as the VTOL section goes here on the Wikipedia page, the F-35B is the only one that's VTOL capable.
Interesting. I wonder why they all didn't get the VTOL one, because it seems like a capability that pretty much every branch would want.
It kind of seems like it until you find out that VTOL actually greatly limits the amount of ordnance that can be carried with the aircraft taking off from a VTOL mode. VTOL is usually used by the Marine Corps, not in the direct 90-degree, like up and down, almost like a helicopter. It's actually used to just shorten the length in which the aircraft need to take off. Usually the nozzles are tilted at a 45-degree angle with a full loaded armament, just so that way they can land and take off in a much shorter area. So for the Marines, it's important because they operate off of the Navy's LHDs, which have a much smaller flight deck than those of the supercarriers that the Navy uses, and so they have to be able to take off and land in a very short distance. Unlike the Navy, which can still take advantage of the entire deck of an aircraft carrier, meaning that they really don't need the VTOL capability for these aircraft to work at full performance. And then the Air Force, of course, using their normal airfields and infrastructure that has been built up over the decades, they don't really need the VTOL capability either. And on top of that, they would find it very hard to use that, at least in real practice, because they would have to pretty much strip down the armament that an F-35 could carry to bare bones for it to be able to successfully conduct a VTOL takeoff and landing.
Interesting. Well, I learned something new today because I've seen clips of the of this one taking off vertically like that, and I've always wondered. I thought all of them really had it like that, but very interesting. Only the B variant.
Yeah, you would think that it would, because everyone always talks about, wow, look, it's VTOL. And it's like, yeah, but only the Marines. But I gotta admit, though, man, that thing does look cool in VTOL mode. Like, honestly, the F-35 is just cool.
Yeah, it really is cool. Like the VTOL mode, I'm seeing people in the live chat say that it literally makes the aircraft pretty much crap at everything else, which is what you said as well. But at the same time, it's like with VTOL, it like makes the plane almost perfect, minus the fact that you can't carry as many munitions and ordnance and things like that. But it pretty much adds like every capability possible to this jet. Like I'm not sure what other feature you could add to the jet to really make it like more advanced than it currently is.
Yeah, that's true. Also, Melanie, you are correct. I'm sorry. I was using the terminology for the AV-8B with the nozzles being directed, because the F-35 does not have nozzles. You are correct with that. Also, another thing I saw, someone said, bro, the LHDs are still Navy. Yeah, that's what I said. Like, Matthew, didn't I say that? I said, the LHDs that the Marines operate off of from the Navy, they have a much shorter flight deck. Didn't I say that?
I think you did.
I think I did. If I did not say that, yeah, the LHDs are operated by the Navy. Like every single ship, except for the Coast Guard cutters and other Coast Guard vessels, are all operated by the U.S. Navy. And I know someone's about to come in and try and be smart and say, oh yeah, what about the ribs? The ribs aren't ships, they're boats. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, one other thing, just to explain this for everyone, like why would the Marines want like a half-capable F-35 that could do VTOL? That's because for the Marines, they aren't really looking for like the best aircraft. They're looking for something that really fits their mission or their role in the military. And the F-35B is largely supposed to be replacing the AV-8B, which a lot of people know and love. This was the first VTOL aircraft out there in the world that was actually successful and was actually mass produced. The Yak-38 can kiss it because it sucks, but beyond that, this thing was pretty good for its time. It's a subsonic, but it was pretty complex. Also, one thing that is really wild about the Harrier is that the original Harrier that was introduced in the British service was designed by the same guy. I'm going to blow y'all away with this, like this historical fact. It was designed by the exact same guy who designed the Sopwith Camel.
Oh, that's kind of fascinating.
That is wild to think about. Like this guy, like the guy who designed the Sopwith Camel was alive long enough that he was actually the one heading the company and the design team. I forgot the name of the company. I think it was Hawker Siddeley or something like that. But they were the ones who designed the original Harrier that the AV-8B was then upgraded out of. So that is a wild fact to think about, is that that guy was that influential. Because the Sopwith Camel was actually a very influential design in late World War I. But still, pretty cool stuff. Like what an upgrade to go from the Sopwith Camel all the way up to the AV-8B. I wish I could remember the guy's name though. Let's see, Sopwith. Yeah, I think Sopwith turned into Hawker Siddeley later on. I mean, designer. Wait a minute, is that him? Is that him? Hang on. Let me. I think this is him. Let's see here. I don't know if this like. Was some guy, I forgot his freaking name. I hate it. I hate that I forget the guy's name because he deserves a lot of credit. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. But before we move on out of the Middle East, let's talk really quickly about the Kerch Bridge, because a lot of people have been wondering what is more important to destroy first, the Kerch Bridge or the Kursk bridges. They sound really similar, but there's a really big difference in between destroying the Kerch Bridge or the bridges in Kursk. And so, Matthew, what are people actually thinking about that? This is literally a split poll.
So I've never seen this before. We have an evenly split poll, like perfectly even. 45% said the Kerch Bridge is more important to destroy first, and another 45% said the Kursk bridges are more important to destroy first. So on this one, I would personally say that I think the Kursk bridges are probably the more operationally important bridges to take out first. The Kerch Bridge has a lot of propaganda value, but at the same time, the Kerch is being used as a logistics route by the Russians, but it's not as important as the Kursk bridges, because right now, I think it's more important for Ukraine to plow through Russia as fast as they can, instead of trying to basically go down to Crimea. I think Ukraine will circle back to Crimea, but right now their focus should be in Russia. They don't want to spread themselves too thin, and by destroying the Kerch, they're kind of redirecting focus back down to Crimea, which would be a little bit odd at the moment. So I would say hit the Kursk bridges, and then they can come back for the other one later. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, the Kursk bridges are the most important one to knock out right now. The Kursk bridge is, of course, strategically and significantly important, but it's not important right now. So we had to prioritize one or the other over, to be stricken. I would say that the Kursk bridges are the most important. Chris Meyer said, "Why not both?" I would agree with that too. Why not have the cake and eat it? But if we had to pick one or the other right now due to limited munitions, although really like the Kerch Bridge and the Kursk bridges use entirely different munition streams to be hit and destroyed, I would say that the Kursk bridges are the ones that should be prioritized at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, Matthew, while you were answering that, I found the guy I was looking for. Thomas Sopwith. He was the guy who was involved in the design of the Sopwith camel, which is named after him, and he was also around for Hawker Siddeley's creation of the Harrier. So he was around for a lot. In fact, this guy was actually into aviation before planes even flew. He actually used to fly in balloons and race them.
Interesting. And also, he was born in Kensington, in London. Very interesting.
Yeah, pretty. He was from an upper class family. I forgot what his dad did, but he was an industrialist who owned several factories in London, and so Thomas Sopwith had a lot of money to work off of. He was kind of like a philanthropist, and so he ended up getting into ballooning, and then once airplanes became a thing, he got into flying with aircraft, and then designing aircraft, and then afterwards he stayed into designing aircraft. But he did a whole bunch of other stuff as well. I mean, this guy was actually a really interesting guy, but did a whole bunch of cool stuff. So this is the guy who designed both the Sopwith Camel and the Harrier at the same time. Wild to think. Also, another one that he designed, but this one's lesser known unless you're from Britain, is the Hawker Hunter, which was also a really successful early jet for its time. This one looks really goofy because it has the tandem cockpit. Let me go find y'all an actual normal-looking Harrier. Well, not a Harrier, a Hunter. Here we go. This is kind of what the Hunter looks like. So he was a part of the design team that made this as well, which was a very influential aircraft at the time in the United Kingdom. So really neat. Like, the guy has one hell of a history. Really one of like the leading people in British aviation, and really world aviation for that matter. And sadly he's not really known by a lot of the public, but really had a big influence on military aviation for pretty much its entire history. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And you can also thank that guy for the Marines wanting a VTOL-capable F-35, because if that guy never was around, the Harrier may have not ever been made, or at least successfully, and then the Marines would have never gotten a taste and a liking for VTOL-capable aircraft. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and I hope we addressed that poll incredibly well, too. But at the moment, we still don't know what's going to be happening in the Middle East. It does look as though things may actually be dying down a little bit, at least from what we can tell, but you can't really count that for anything down there. An attack could happen literally tomorrow, and it looks like everything was fine today. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're now moving on up to Kyiv, because it is time to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 911 of the war. And so without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Give me, please, the speech.
A long-lasting speech.
Дорогі українці, українки, головне за сьогодні перше було Вже кілька доповідей головкома Сирського. Фронт. Наші позиції, передусім, це Покровський напрямок, наша Донеччина. Ми розуміємо кроки ворога і посилюємось. Проведено перевірку щодо забезпечення снарядами. Дуже важливо, щоб партнери реально виконували зобов'язання по кожному пакету, по всім нашим домовленостям. Це фундаментально для оборони. Наша операція в Курській області триває. Наша бойова робота, робляться кроки. Контролюємо визначені райони. І дякую всім нашим хлопцям, всім підрозділам за подальше поповнення обмінного фонду. Друге, провів тривалу, дуже детальну нараду з урядовцями та представниками Верховної Ради. Кілька питань. Плануємо рішення, які треба ухвалити для підтримки наших сил оборони, а також для підтримки економічної активності в країні, щоб ми могли не лише зберегти робочі місця, але й дати українській економіці більше можливостей, більше потенціалу зростання. І це важливі питання, важливі і висновки після зустрічей з підприємцями в областях. Всі деталі представить уряд, коли відповідні проекти рішень будуть підготовлені. Але вже можна сказати, що домовились з урядом, міністри шукатимуть альтернативні рішення без тиску на білий бізнес, а також домовились про додаткові державні кроки щодо детінізації. Окрім цього, обговорили сьогодні роботу з партнерами щодо наближення реальних рішень про обіцяні 50 мільярдів доларів від заморожених російських активів. Багато було вже політичних заяв від партнерів. Багато і зараз звучить щодо цього. Але нам потрібен реальний механізм. Потрібно, щоб кошти від активів агресора працювали на реальну допомогу захисту від агресора. Щоб все це працювало заради України і українців і вже найближчими місяцями. Занадто довго тривають відповідні дискусії, нарешті потрібні рішення. Ще одне за сьогодні. Говорив з патріархом Варфоломієм. Я подякував йому за підтримку України і українців, нашого захисту і нашої незалежності. Поінформував щодо ухваленого закону на посилення нашої духовної незалежності. Дуже важливо, що ми маємо спільне розуміння того об'єднавчого потенціалу для українського православ'я, який дає цей ухвалений закон. І все для цього передбачено цілком достатньо, щоб дійсно позбутися залежності від Москви і додати єдності України. Дякую усім світі, хто з Україною. Слава Україні!
Rum Slava.
Herom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 911 of the war. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. It is an incredibly fun segment to talk to. It's an incredibly fun segment to talk about. We love the segment because it actually gives us a moment to be able to talk to each and every one of y'all, hopefully, at least here over the next little bit. But still, I got to say to everyone who has been watching so far tonight, a huge shout out and a huge thanks to everyone who has been enjoying the stream. Tonight we had a peak of about 10.4 thousand people watching, and so far 60,000 people have watched this stream since it began. We are entirely honored and extremely grateful to have each and every single one of y'all here with us every single night. I say this a lot these days, but I always feel like I want to let y'all know that we're very happy to have y'all here, and we really do enjoy having folks that listen to us as I ramble on for hours about the news and what's going on out there. I'd absolutely love to know that y'all are here. Matthew does too, and I got to thank y'all so much once again for having been here with us for a while and always enjoying. If y'all are new to the channel, by the way, we actually run this pretty much every single day of the week, except for Monday. You can always count on us being here every day at the same time of night, covering this news. Everything that's happened over the past 24 hours, it will be covered, at least that we have video and picture evidence to confirm. So if you do subscribe, you actually get privy knowledge to when these streams run, which is pretty much literally every single night, except for Monday. And we're always running the stream at the exact same time. So please make sure to subscribe, but don't go anywhere. We still have a lot of fun to go. And Matthew, what kind of fun do we have coming? Because it looks as though the Israelis are a point of question, and it looks like they may actually be having a lot of fun right now. And so what do we got?
All right, so it's time for the most beloved segment of the night. It's the final question segment of the stream. And of course, we have the polls to address, then we have the super chats to address, and also the live chat questions as well. But real quick, to go ahead and address the poll that's currently running, it says Israel has begun mass bombing Iranian proxies in Syria after ceasefire talks have fallen apart. And what are your thoughts? 51% said more Israel preemptive strikes are coming soon, while 27% said big Iran attacks are probably coming soon instead, and 22% said nothing is going to happen. And on this one, it's really hard to tell because everybody seems to be stalling right now in the Middle East. I think Iran is stalling because, for one thing, they can't get the proxies on the same page. And number two, they're trying to finish up development of those nukes that they probably have in their possession. So that's probably why they're stalling. And then Israel has been stalling to wait for the U.S. assets like the Abraham Lincoln Strike Group to get into the area. Now we're seeing some mass bombing happening inside of Syria because Israel feels protected. So I think I'm with the 51%. We will see Israel striking out at the proxies even more in the coming days and weeks, but I think Iran is going to hold off on attacking for some time for many reasons. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say Israel is most likely going to be conducting preemptive strikes from here into oblivion, to be entirely honest. I think they're going to keep that up and probably try and keep the pressure up on the proxies at least. They'll probably wait on Iran until they actually officially do something and then strike back, so that way it's a defensive strike instead of a preemptive one. But as far as the proxies go, I do think they're going to be conducting even more preemptive strikes into the future, and I feel like that's a very prudent action considering that the Iranians have kind of died off, at least in the urgency of attacking Israel, but they didn't back off the concept that they will be attacking them. So I hope that that does address that well, at least from what I would understand of the situation at the moment. And we'll be waiting to kind of see how this area unfolds. We can see that the United States is moving more assets into the area even now, which is giving us a fairly good idea. They have enough intelligence to understand there may still be something that's going to happen in this area, but we don't know what. And we don't know when. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least given what we have at the moment. And with that, we are now moving on into the next one.
All right, so moving away from our poll segment, it's now time to move into our super chat segment here, and our first one of the last segment is going to go to Hokey Redneck, who's also a channel legend, by the way, and he throws in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, Hokey, once again for that support. He said, why did the Italian Air Force overfly D.C. with tricolory trailing? He said, it was taking my buddy out for a beer when they came over.
Really? They did that, Hokey Redneck? I didn't even know. That's actually kind of cool, dude. Is there like any pictures out that like of that? Let me go pull that up. Italian.
Also, Hokey's in DC. I didn't know that.
That's pretty cool, actually. I did not know.
That is cool.
Yeah, that is actually neat. Oh my goodness. I hope that we actually find. Oh, this is cool. This is so cool. Hang on. Let me make sure that I can find a picture of this. Wow, that is neat. Hang on. I gotta find a good picture of this thing. I'd be damned. I wish we could find it. Hang on, let me go see if I can get a good picture. I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm having to stall while I try and find it. Because Fox 5 DC covered it. And so let's see. The Italian Air Force flew over Washington, D.C. Wednesday afternoon as they make their way back from Canada, where they celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force. The planes released green, white, and red smoke as it goes over the U.S. Capitol, symbolic of the Italian flag. It was the first time that their smoke had been seen in D.C. since their last North American tour in 1992, about 32 years ago. The flyover happened just before 5 p.m. The route began on the east side of the city, with a single east-to-west passage just south of the National Mall. People saw the bright colors in the sky from all over DC, and we actually have a little tweet here that actually shows the video of them releasing the smoke. So let me see if I can get this up here on screen for y'all, and here it is. And let's take a look at this. So there they are. I don't know what the Italian aerobatic team is called, sadly. Oh, dude, that's cool. That is incredibly cool.
That is pretty sick. I like that. That's sick.
So where is this guy? So there's the Capitol over there. So where is this? I have no clue. He's clearly Wait a minute. I think I know where this is. This is behind the Capitol, near that giant baseball stadium. He's probably looking south towards the Potomac, and that's where these aircraft are flying over. Really cool to see.
I feel like we're looking through a window at this too, like with the way this is like boxed in on the screen.
Yeah, that's just like looking at like a tiny little shadow box or something. But that is so cool. And there's the Washington Monument. Honestly, man, Washington D.C. is looking really nice down there.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good, man.
Well, yeah, not bad at all. There's actually a lot more trees than I remembered. Like I don't, for some reason, Mandy, I don't remember a single tree in Washington D.C. when we went like years ago.
Oh no, I remember them. They were around more like in the neighborhood, sort of like suburb areas of DC, but not like in the actual like really like heart of downtown parts of it.
Yeah, apparently so. But that is also, Hokey Redneck, that is so cool to know that you're actually in Washington, the federal capital of America. That is incredibly neat. The federal district, the only one that exists in all of America. That is incredibly cool to know that you're up there, Hokey Redneck. And also, I gotta say, that is really cool. Like apparently you are one of the few people to have seen that, because the last time that they did that was about 32 years ago. So apparently they were flying over as they were just making their way down south, and so they just flew over and showed the tricolor of Italy. That is actually really, really cool. And you were actually there for a pretty special occasion, actually, Hokey Redneck. And I gotta say, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that addresses that well. We actually got down to the bottom of it, and that's just neat. That's cool. You actually saw something. I didn't know about that. So that's news to me as well. And man, I wish I could have seen that. That would have been really cool. You know, just hanging out in Washington D.C. down in like the federal district, like down here where like most of the government is, and then see that fly over from like the National Mall or something. That would have been neat. That would have been actually been really cool. I wish I was there for that. I'm jealous, Hokey Redneck. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel keep on running. And also, by the way, there are so many cool things to see in Washington, D.C. Like, one of them, like, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is typical of the Enforcer. One of them is Union Station in Washington, D.C., because this is actually one of the few surviving Union stations in any of the major cities in America. Like, when I say, like, Union stations, I mean the Union Station. I'm not talking about, like, Penn Central station in New York City, which was demolished to make way for Madison Square Garden, and also a couple of others. New York Central Station and also Washington D.C.'s Union Station are some of the few major original Union stations or major train stations to survive in the entirety of the United States. And it is gorgeous on the inside. I mean, it's actually, I would say it's a historic landmark of America, and one that deserves to be preserved well on into the future, because look at the vaulted ceilings and the detail that's inside of them. You just don't find this kind of stuff in modern architecture anymore. And let me see if I can get you all another better picture of this, because everyone likes to take those stylized pictures. They don't just show you like the hall. But here's what
They should return to this form of architecture too. Like, instead of going with that minimalist garbo that they like use to basically like pass off cheap design and cheap construction, they ought to return back to like the proper way of building stuff like this. I know it costs a lot more, but it lasts for longer, and also it looks a hell of a lot better.
Well, interestingly enough, it actually doesn't cost more. It just requires more involved skilled artisans, which actually, crazily enough, it actually doesn't jack up the cost of these things all that much, because back in the day, it was actually considered cheap to build these things, crazily enough. Like, you wouldn't believe it, but it actually was. But the building is gorgeous. Like, a lot of people don't give this thing the credit that it's due for being one of the most beautiful and stunning train stations in America, and really, like, the peak of what I would call the American neoclassical revival kind of architecture that's seen in most of Washington, D.C. for most of the federal buildings. But still, really cool building here.
Isn't it kind of funny? Isn't it kind of funny how like modern architecture, they call it minimalism, and they sell it like it's some type of like feature or some benefit to it or something, like it's really fancy. But in reality, all it is like the most like lame brain, like least attempt at like making stuff look good, and also building stuff usually the cheapest way possible, because the minimalism is literally in the name. It's minimal, the least possible. So I just don't know. Like, every time I see like a minimalist house or a building or something, I just think someone conned somebody to tell them this was great and basically sold them on a cheap construction.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible, man. But let me tell you something about this. This is actually wild. the building was open. Like, a lot of people are thinking, well, you know, how old is this? Like, this seems to be old. I mean, clearly, people don't build like this anymore. Y'all would be shocked to believe that this Union Station building did not exist until 1908. So it's only a little over 100 years old. It's not that old of a building, surprisingly enough. And that's the thing that really, like, blows a lot of people away with architecture like this, is that they think that this stuff is from, like, a time long since past. Like, no one will ever build like this. There's really no way to build like this because the architectural construction techniques have moved on. It would take too long. It'd be too expensive. What's shocking about this is that this entire building under this marble-clad, like, exterior it's steel girder construction, much like any other modern building. And so you can build buildings like this nowadays. It just requires the commitment from people to think that this is something that should be built. And you could build stuff like this anywhere and everywhere you want. You could build office buildings like this, because all it is just changing the exterior aesthetic of the building. Like, you know, if you remove the columns, the statues, and the marble cladding from the outside, and you simplified it down to have angular sides, you could actually make this train station look brutalist, because all it would take is an aesthetic redesign of the building, not a structural redesign. And that's something that a lot of people don't touch on with modern day construction. You can make stuff look gorgeous like this. It's just that you have to have people put out the idea that buildings should be designed like this again, and that there should be some kind of grandeur or beauty to these buildings that you can actually look at, and instead of having to really force yourself to think, wow, this building that looks like shit, it looks really good, you can look at it and go, damn, this is actually really nice looking, it's really pretty. Just like the Capitol building, like, that's another thing that a lot of people don't know about the Capitol building. Most of the Capitol building was built at a much later date than you would think, because a lot of people think, oh, this thing existed from like the late 1700s, right? Only this part of the building right here existed in 1799, I think it was. This building, well, this part was completed. Every other part of the Capitol building was built way later. The last part, which is the actual main dome, was replaced sometime around the 1850s, right before the U.S. Civil War, because originally the Capitol building had a copper dome, and it looked a lot like the dome of the Pantheon in Rome. And let me see if I can get y'all the old Capitol dome. Let me see if I can show y'all that. Here we go. So here's a painting of the old Capitol building. It did not have the wings yet on the sides. It was just the main Capitol building and then the copper-plated dome. And that copper-plated dome is literally an exact replica, crazily enough, of the actual dome that it was based off of in Rome. And let me go see if I can show y'all the Pantheon here, because once again, the founding fathers were Enlightenment thinkers, and so they were trying to call back to the times of the greats, the Roman Republic, the Greek city-states, things like that. And so you can see the dome up here on top of the Pantheon. Look at the dome on top of the Capitol building. One-to-one match. It was literally designed to copy it. So that's actually a pretty cool fact. But then they got rid of the copper dome later on in the 1850s in a redesign when they were building the wings to the Capitol building, and then they started to construct the main dome that everyone knows today, that's become a symbol of the American government. Crazily enough, this dome was actually still under construction when Abraham Lincoln was president in the U.S. Civil War. And there's a picture of him making a speech in front of the Capitol dome, and it was still under construction in the background. So really cool facts, like architecturally, about Washington, D.C. and some of its history. Like, another cool, like, I don't mean to rabbit hole too much, but there's so many cool things architecturally about a lot of the buildings here inside of Washington, D.C. The Washington Monument during the Civil War was uncompleted. You can actually see that on the building. It has a visible scar. Where this stone ends right here, where it goes from white to like yellowish stone, this is how far they made it, I think, by the 1860s, like right at the outbreak of the Civil War, because the trust that was building the Washington Monument ran out of funds, so they stopped construction. And then in the late 1870s, they restarted construction on the monument. So for like an entire 2 decades, this thing was literally just like a stone nub in the middle of Washington, D.C. So then later on in the 1870s, the trust started again, and they've raised enough funds, but the quarry that they had been getting the original stone out of had shut down and had ended up becoming derelict. And so instead of restarting an entire quarry, they just sourced the stone from another local quarry, and that's why the stone on the Washington Monument changes color about a third of the way up. And then
I didn't even notice that, like, until I just like looked at this picture and you said that. I didn't even realize there was 2 different color stones going on with this. It looked like one like continuous color when we saw it in person.
yeah, it's like, it's so cool to see this kind of stuff, you know, and it's like, That's whack. And another thing, like, I don't mean to tell you all everything about Washington, D.C., but where the reflecting pool is, this used to be where the office complexes for the Department of War was. Before the Department of War turned into the Department of Defense, and before the Pentagon was built, they just had these giant shotgun-style office buildings that literally stretched all the way from the Washington Monument to the Lincoln Memorial in between, and that was where the Department of War was. And so that ended up becoming really, like, problematic because it was a very inefficient design for the Department of War, and it was becoming huge, you know, especially at the outbreak of World War II. So then they said, let's go build the Pentagon, and then they went and built the Pentagon over here. So it took all of those shotgun-styled office buildings, and it designed them to where they all pretty much were around each other and based on a focalized point, meaning that moving from one part of the complex to the next was a lot easier than the shotgun style layout that they had in between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial.
Very interesting. I didn't know that.
And one more thing, I have to share y'all one more thing since we made it all the way from the Capitol down to the end of the National Mall, if you want to call it that. The Lincoln Memorial was actually built in the swamp when it was originally constructed. Like, you can see pictures of its construction. Lincoln Memorial under construction. And let me go find these pictures for y'all because it is so cool to see. So let me see if I can get the right picture here. Dang, man, come on. I gotta find this one. It's the one I have to have. There we go. This was in 1917. During the Lincoln Memorial's construction, they were still fitting out the inside of it, but the War Department hadn't built its complexes in between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial yet, and nothing had really been developed on this side of Washington, D.C. just yet. So all that laid in between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial was this giant swampy marsh.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, pretty cool. And what happened later on is that they ended up draining out this area and getting rid of the swamp. And in the process of doing so, they dredged out this giant area of water here that they ended up calling the tidal basin. And that's why this entire area of western Washington, D.C. is no longer a swamp. It's actually firm, hard ground. It's because they dredged the entire area and actually created usable ground out of it.
So they literally just came in here, wanted to build the monument, and they were like, we got to literally drain the swamp. Well, literally drain the swamp. That was not a reference, by the way. That was actually completely unintentional, but I realized literally instantly once I said the last word what that was actually going to be. Angel Art said it as well. I'm not the only one who thought that. That was just completely unintentional, by the way. So no politics, but they literally drained the swamp. Oh, geez, that was unfortunate.
Well, actually, they didn't drain the swamp, literally. I just gotta say that because that's the only way we can say that. They didn't drain the swamp to, create more room for, the monuments or anything. They actually drained the swamp so that way they could make more usable room for parks and recreation. Because Washington, D.C., at least their city planners at the time, were still working off of, the City Beautiful kind of a concept, that went along with Central Park and the Great Plan for Chicago that never came into being. They were still kind of working off of that. So they really just dredged it to create more usable parks in this area, and they still exist to this day. And then the Japanese later on, just to kind of put out a little bit more detail here, the Japanese actually gifted in the 20s a whole bunch of cherry blossoms to the United States, and we ended up planting them in this area that we drained the swamp out of and created these parks right here. And that's why everyone flocks to Washington, D.C. in the spring, is to go see the cherry blossoms bloom. And then recently some of them started to die because they're reaching the end of their natural lifespan. So now the United States government is actually putting in tax dollars. I feel like this is actually an appropriate usage of it, to clone these specific cherry trees and to replant them in the places where some of them are ending up dying. And so they're making sure to keep the area beautiful. They're making sure to keep the cherry blossoms around, and it is a sight to see. I've never seen it in person, but a lot of people that I know have, and they say that it is unbelievably beautiful in this area when the cherry blossoms are in bloom. But a really cool place Washington, D.C. is.
Kind of interesting that the seat of government is literally in a swamp. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's wild. Actually, funnily enough, if you want to know how big the swamp was when they originally created Washington, D.C., it literally spanned up to where East Street Northwest right here is. Like, it was all the way up to there, because the presidents back in the day, at least some of them, would actually go swimming in the Potomac, because the Potomac and the swamp literally reached pretty much all the way up to the White House itself. And through time, they eventually dredged it until they made usable ground out of this entire southwestern area of the city.
That's crazy. Like, literally. Like, I guess you could call the people swamp creatures.
Get out of here. Man. Oh, man.
The politicians, you know.
Oh, no. Like, oh, no, please. But, yeah, you know, it's still interesting stuff about Washington, D.C. It's a very, very cool place. It has loads of interesting history about it. Probably one of the most interesting cities in America, beyond, you know, most of the northeastern cities like New York City and Boston, which have a lot of rich history about them as well. But Washington, D.C. really has a lot of cool stuff going for it. And also the road design is really cool, too. And then, you know, you get the Illuminati freaks that don't get that the whole, like, city was designed off of a Parisian model. You know, it's a whole thing with that. Like, it's impossible to even argue with the conspiracy theorist people. But the road design is really cool because it's actually made off of vantage points. Like, you can see all of the roads in Washington, D.C. on the northern side of the city here, like at DuPont Circle and Logan Circle. Every single one of those roads has a sight line to the White House, and that was done deliberately so that way wherever you were, you could look straight down and see the White House. That was supposed to exist in between the Capitol building and the White House. You can actually see that Pennsylvania Avenue was supposed to extend all the way up to where there was a perfect sight line in between the Capitol and the White House. But then Andrew Jackson screwed that over, and he had the Treasury building built literally next door to the White House, so that way it would obscure the sight line in between the White House and the Capitol building, kind of screwing over the general road plan that Washington, D.C. had built for the sightline type of a deal. But still, the sightlines generally are in place throughout the entirety of the city, except for this one area in between the Capitol and the White House. But with that, hope that does address that incredibly well. I think I went over that way too much. That was like a rabbit hole for the ages right there. But I hope y'all enjoyed it and learned some really cool little fun facts about this place, because it's one hell of a place, that's for sure. Oh yeah, by the way, Watergate's out here. Forgot to mention that. That's where Watergate is. Many of y'all will know why Watergate's important. It's still there, funnily enough. I never went in it, but one day I hope to go in there and check the place out and see what it actually... Wait a minute, what? Wait a minute, there's a running hotel, Matthew, at the Watergate still.
The Watergate Hotel, like that. I wonder if you get like crashing sounds and glass breaking, like as a part of the experience.
I heard that's just Mazel Tov these days. I don't know. Like,
I know I'm not a crook.
I want to tell you this: I'm not a crook. Or something like that.
Part of the experience is you have like a Richard Nixon's ghost like breaking into your hotel room, coming into my. I told you I'm not a crook.
No,
Like, I believe you, sir. Get out.
He sits there and goes, "Now the Chinese, now they're a very interesting country," or something like that. And you're like, Nixon, what are you doing? This isn't China. Oh, what? Oh, this is Watergate. Something like that.
Settle down, Dick.
It's just a storm, Dick. Sit down, or something like that. Oh man, and then Georgetown is really cool. There's so much to talk about up here. I mean, I could do this with every city in America here on the East Coast. Some of them on the West Coast have really cool histories as well, but Washington, D.C. is really, really neat. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Tessa said, there's always been a hotel there, LOL. Yeah, but you know, Tessa, for some reason, I just thought the hotel wouldn't exist anymore, you know, because of that whole thing that happened. I don't know. For some reason, I felt like that would impact, like, the business the hotel would get. Apparently not. Apparently it's just still there, and it just has that as a part of the history. How much does it cost to stay in the Watergate? $190 a night? That's well, I mean, actually, it's more like $279.
I was about to say, what's it cost to stay in the Watergate? One felony conviction.
Well, no, it costs one resignation per night. Like, I have to resign the office of the president. But anyways, with that, we do have to move on to the next ones. But still, I hope y'all greatly enjoyed all of this fun talk about Washington, D.C. and everything that's going on up here and all the neat stuff. And with that, the German-American Friendship Garden.
When was that built, I wonder?
When in the hell was this here? I don't remember this ever being here. Is there anything in this garden? That is, I know what that's about. And that's a picture in the German-American Friendship Garden. I feel like the placement of that is fairly deliberate. Dang it, man. Like, I don't know what's in there because it doesn't look like there's actually anything in there at all. But yeah, oh well.
It
Anyways,
was there. It was there because I remember we passed by. I think the Albert Einstein thing memorial is around here somewhere. It was like on a corner or something around this little spot.
I think it was, now that you're saying that, I think it was. And where in the world, let's see, so here's the Korean War Veterans Memorial. Where in the world was the Vietnam Veterans Memorial? It was somewhere like over here, wasn't it? What the heck? I don't, man, there's the Vietnam Women's Memorial, but where is the just Vietnam War Memorial in general? Because I remember it was somewhere down here. I'm not seeing it on the map, though. Where in the world is it?
I'm not sure, really.
That's weird. I can't find it. It's down here. Like, wait, hang on. Let me just type it in. Vietnam, War Memorial. Vietnam Veterans Memorial. It's up here? Oh, there's the V-shaped, sidewalk that goes through it. Okay, so it's actually by the Vietnam Women's Memorial. For some reason, I thought that those were swapped. Like the Korean War Veterans Memorial was on the north side, and the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was on the south side. But apparently not. I didn't even know. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. We went on a rabbit hole of the century, Hokey Redneck. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope you enjoyed us getting to talk all about the Washington, D.C. and all the cool stuff going on up there. Really cool to know you're up there in Washington, D.C. And I hope we were able to address that question well, and I hope that we were able to also talk about a really cool city in America a whole lot. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $100 super chat from Andy L., the channel legend as well. And thank you very much, Andy, for the kind words in the live chat tonight. We've been seeing them all night, and thank you very much for appreciating our reports in the channel as well. And Andy, also a huge thanks for supporting the channel also. He said, for the vacation fund, and take one from the chat.
And I would have to say thank you so much for the massive support, Andy L., absolute channel legend. And thank you for supporting the vacation fund. The vacation fund is a new one. And we actually didn't think that the vacation fund would exist. But still, it seems like a lot of people are really behind us taking a vacation. And hopefully, we will be able to have one really soon. Hopefully, one that's very relaxing, one that we can recharge from, and one that we can come back to and get right back to work on this, and not feel like we went through hell and back on the vacation. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who helped make this thing possible, help us to keep this thing running, and I got to thank you massively for that, because if it was not for folks like you, Andy L., we wouldn't have been able to exist for this long. I say this to a lot of people, Andy L. I'm sure you know that because you've been around every single night, but it does mean a lot to us. We can't run this thing. We can't function as a business, as doing this as a living, as our full-time jobs, if it wasn't for amazingly kind-hearted folks like you, Andy L., who enjoyed this channel so much that you would want to support it and help us to keep this thing going. It really couldn't. And we thank every single one of y'all. We owe y'all every single thing we can, because y'all made this possible for us. It wasn't us who made this possible. You know, we run a good stream. It brings in a lot of people. We make good videos. They bring in a lot of people too, and a lot of subscribers. But if it wasn't for all of y'all who were supporting us and backing us along the way, we wouldn't have been able to ever make the first step in making this channel possible. And I got to thank all of y'all so much once again for always sticking the course with us, always supporting this channel, always having our backs, and helping us out through everything. Every single thing that's ever happened, y'all helped us out and backed us up in. And I got to thank y'all once again. And I got to thank you once again, Andy L., for being one of those folks and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Danny3648, who puts in a $25 donation, and thank you, Danny, as well, for that support. He said, hello, enforcers, and all ye good people, and do you think it can become critical for Ukraine if the Russians are able to take Pokrovsk in the Donbass, as that is an important supply and logistics hub for the front line?
I would say that Pokrovsk is actually a pretty important supply point for most of the area. I would agree with that, actually. And it does seem as though that is getting a little bit hairy because really that means that Konstantinivka would end up becoming the major supply point. There wouldn't be a backup anymore for the southern area of Donetsk, meaning that the supply lines in this area would get pretty long and they would start to become a little bit arduous to hold down the rest of the Donbass, or at least this part inside of Donetsk. Now, the situation around Chasiv Yar, of course, is a pretty strenuous one as well, and if the Russians began to break through in that area and start moving on to Konstantinivka, well, largely the Ukrainians would have to start considering that Kramatorsk and Slovyansk would become the next major battlefields, and they would have to hold the defense of the very little part of Donetsk that they would hold from those two cities. So I would agree, it's actually a bit of a major ordeal with what's going on right now. We don't talk about it much because there's so much more going on in the war, but it does seem as though it is starting to become a little bit of a serious situation and one that is fairly concerning. And I got to say, as far as it goes, what would happen? Do you think that it would become critical for Ukraine? I would, as far as the general question of is it critical, to answer that, yes, I think it actually would end up being a bit of a critical issue. Usually I say that things that are lost by Ukraine aren't really that big of a deal because Bakhmut was on the front lines, it wasn't a major supply hub, and Avdiivka was right on the front lines and it wasn't a major supply hub either. But Pokrovsk is so far back, it is a major supply hub, and not only that, a lot of the major roadways in this area move supplies to and fro pretty much everywhere. I mean, Ukrainian forces all the way down near the area of Marinka get supplied from Pokrovsk and the major roadways that come from there. And if Pokrovsk is taken, the supply lines from Marinka are now stretched incredibly far off somewhere else, maybe to Pokrovsk, all the way out here, pretty much inside of the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, which is very, very far away. And that could start posing defensive issues in this area because the Ukrainians will not have the kind of availability of munitions and supplies that they would have had otherwise. And so, to be honest with you, yes, I do think it would be a critical situation if the Russians did end up taking Pokrovsk. Hopefully that would not be the case. Otherwise, the situation within most of the southern Donetsk region, or the Donetsk Oblast, could end up getting a little bit difficult. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Live Laugh Toaster Bath, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge thanks to you for that support. They said, for the vacation fund, and not in a hot dog man way. Oh, yes, indeed, not a hot dog man way. That's a good point. He said, glad to hear you guys are finally taking a break. And is there any credence to the land exchange with China and Russia? And if so, what's Putler getting in return? And LSA.
Very interesting question, Live Laugh Toaster Bath. I would have to say, from what I understand, I don't really know a lot about the Russian-Chinese land exchange that they've come up with, so I'd have to declare ignorance on that at the moment, at least as best as I can, because I don't really have a lot of knowledge on that one, sadly. But beyond that, I would say that, let's see here. Let's see, if so, what's Putin getting in return? Of course, sadly, I'd have to declare ignorance on that part because I don't really know a lot about it. But beyond that, I do thank you for supporting the vacation fund and wanting us to finally take one. We haven't taken one in 4 years. We haven't taken one the entire time we've been running this channel for about the 3 years that's been going on, which is wild to think about because usually we would take a vacation like once every year or even a little bit more than that. Wasn't usually that far, though. Usually, like, our preferred, like, nesting spot for a vacation was like Florida or something like that. But this time I can say, and the only reason I was saying that this time, it's going to be different. Wherever we're going, it's probably not Florida, to be entirely honest. No disrespect to the Florida viewers, it's just that we want a change of scenery and we want to see something brand new. So it's going to probably be somewhere else in America. But with that, I thank you so much once again. I would have to say, it is good that we're not vacationing like the hot dog man does, making it look like he's a hero because he's taking a paid vacation that his viewers paid for, that he made them feel like they were obligated to pay for his vacation. Although, like here's how it will work, and this is like the crazy part. He would set up a fundraiser for supporting Ukraine. His viewers would fundraise enough that they would reach the goal that the fundraiser had laid out, and then you go, wow, great job, guys. I mean, y'all really ought to pat yourselves on the back for fundraising all that money, but y'all now owe me money for all expenses paid vacation because y'all did all that hard work fundraising for whatever I'm doing. And then he would get he would get like as much money for this vacation as he ended up fundraising to help Ukraine. And then he would go over there on his viewers' dollar and pretty much bar crawl around Kyiv endlessly. Like, that's all he did. And it's like, that doesn't look good. Like, I'm not going to disguise our vacation as we're going to be heroes of of Ukraine or anything like that. Like, we truly are tired. Like, you know, like we're just kind of getting a little worn out and we want to recharge our batteries. That's kind of like the honest truth as to why people take vacations. Would we sit there and try and make it sound like we're heroes that we're going on a vacation? No, because that seems really weird. Like, we really are just taking a vacation. And so I would have to say, thank the Lord it's not in the hot dog man way. And also, I see someone interesting, Matthew, in the chat saying, actually, there's nothing wrong with the way hot dog man takes a vacation. Yeah, I would say there generally is, because, like, let's say hypothetically, I take a vacation to Washington, D.C. Am I going to make it sound like to y'all, hey, I need y'all to give me money for a vacation because I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. and I'm going to change the world tomorrow without even any plans to, like, meet anyone in advance? I'm just going to show up in the Cannon House building where all the representatives are and go knock on the one from my district in Alabama and just meet some of their, like, interns, and I change the world? Am I going to try and do something as narcissistic and stupid as that? No, because it would be dumb. It really would be. And it's trying to get free vacations off of the viewer's dime and then try and disguise it like you're really doing something or you're a hero for doing it. Like, no one thinks, I don't want anyone to thank me, really, because I'm taking a vacation. I mean, I'm just taking a vacation. You know, it's like, you know, that is what it is. And also, on top of that, I wouldn't take a vacation to an active war zone and sit there and party and celebrate and have so much fun, while I know that hundreds, well, actually thousands of people are dying every day less than 100 miles away from where I am right now. Seems kind of wrong to do something like that. You know, that's what I'm saying. So with that, and also another thing to the specific person that is talking about this in the chat, I see that you're kind of changing your opinion when I'm explaining it, and I'm glad you see where we're coming from. But also on top of that, I don't provide this person any sympathy because this guy has doxed us, he's harassed us, he's tried to get us injured or at worst killed with his community by having us swatted at our law school. There was an attempt that was made. If you want to know more about that, there is a police report that was filed about that in the local area where we're from, which is in Birmingham. So just look around the local counties. You will be able to find that police report eventually, because I actually don't know what it's cataloged under, but it is out there because I was there when it was filed, and they gave me the case number for it on a policeman's card, but I forgot the freaking case number, and I don't know where I put that card either because that was quite a while ago. But beyond that, it's still, I don't have any sympathy for this guy. And on top of that, I don't have any sympathy for him anyways, because it's such a scammy thing to do, to make it sound like your vacation is doing the world good. It's like a vacation is a self-indulgent thing. Like, I'm going to admit it as well. Our vacation is a self-indulgent thing. I mean, we're going off to go have fun, to enjoy ourselves. We're not doing it for the betterment of society and the world. And I feel like disguising a vacation like that is just a really shitty and misleading thing to do for people. You know, it just it just doesn't jive with me. That's not who I am. I'm not into people like that. I don't like when people do that kind of stuff. You know, I don't like it when people go on a vacation and they go, I like to give back. It's like, you're not giving back anything. You're just going on a vacation, dude. You know, it's like that's just dumb to say. Like, why would you say? You know, I'm just kind of that kind of a person. I'm a more practical minded person when it comes to things, and I feel like everything we have to do, just because we're in the Ukraine war, well, really the pro-Western world and reporting and trying to support Western interests, it doesn't mean we have to paint everything we do in our personal lives as furthering that idea. I mean, sometimes we can just do things for ourselves and just admit it. You know, like, this is a vacation for me. And that's it. Like, you know, like, there's no further explanation to it. You don't have to justify it by making it sound like you're a hero for taking a vacation and treating yourself. Like, treating yourself, you're not a hero for doing that. You're just doing something you want to do. You know, that's not bad. It's not good. Certainly not heroic, though. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I hope that kind of explains the whole hot dog man side of things. I see a lot of people saying, who are y'all talking about? We're not ever going to mention their name because that's what they feed off of. They feed off of rage baiting other YouTubers and then praying that they mention their actual YouTube channel handle's name, so that way they can get some more viewership and hopefully subscribers, because they suck so much at running a YouTube channel, they really can't get subscribers any other way than trying to steal them off of other people. Like, I never thought I would have to sit there and, like, actually feel like we had to guard subscribers from a really shitty person when I started off doing this thing, but nowadays I'm going to make sure that that guy never gets a single plug of his real name of his channel ever, because he's a crappy guy. He tried to get us hurt and killed. I'm not going to let him get any publicity for that. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Live, Laugh, Toaster Bath, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Dixie LaFleur, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Dixie, as well, for that support. They said, can you tell us about the wee storage of chemicals by the Russians? Hey, I have a little Irish in there, a little wee storage.
Let's see. The storage of chemical. Now, the Russians do actually store a lot of chemical weapons. They have for a very long time. From what we understand, they slowly destroy them. But we haven't heard a lot about that lately. I actually think they stopped destroying the chemical weapons years ago. But they have a lot of them, and they have some nasty ones like sarin gas. Like, honestly, like, really the best way to explain it, imagine the worst chemical gases that were ever created and used in warfare, and the Russians just have loads of it. It was actually the plan back in Soviet times that if things really got bad, they were going to start deploying chemical warfare on the battlefield along with tactical nuclear weapons. So they were practically going to try and make the battlefield an unlivable hell. And so, pretty wild stuff. I don't really know much about it, though, to be honest, so that's kind of like my general, like, overview, like, kind of like story about the chemical gases. Sadly, I don't know much about that like I know about like Washington DC or something like that, but still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Dixie LaFleur, I gotta thank you so much for being here for an incredibly long time, and thank you for asking an interesting question. Although I don't know a lot about it, it is kind of interesting. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and thank you for helping this channel keep on running. And also, Barry Badgernet said, Matthew, about what you were saying. Oh, I didn't see that. Yeah, you probably didn't see it because apparently you took that stream down because he got disrespected by everyone so much in that like whole 2 hours. It was humiliating.
He took down several, actually. He took down several of them. That one I was telling you about where someone like was really rude to him and stuff like that, and he just said, oh, I'm sorry, that was a bad question. He took that one down. He took down the one where the DNC employees flipped him off and told him to leave. He took that one down, too. So now you can't find him anywhere because I guess he was embarrassed.
Man, imagine being someone who is so insufferable that just running into contact for you for like 2 minutes is enough to get people hostile, like in real life, against you. You gotta be an insufferable person to have something like that happen. Like, I mean, like some people have said in the past, man, I'm sure you've heard this one a lot. If everyone around you is an asshole, the problem is you. And that really does apply for Hot Dog Man, 100%. But with that...
100%. 110%, actually. Like the vote for Putin. 130%.
Man. Dude, it's sad. It really is sad. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I hope he's having another fun day out there. I'm sure he's going to get so rattled by it that he has to break YouTube's guidelines and smoke weed again on a stream, which is against their community guidelines. It's something you can get striked for. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to GunFox61, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you, GunFox, as well, for that support. They said that the date is 19-22, August 1991, Soviet coup attempt, and an eruption of lethal gas from Lake Nyos in Cameroon wipes out 4 villages on August 21st, 1986 and 1959, and Hawaii becomes the 50th state to, let's see, do something horrible to the eyes. Look up X32 and question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, GunFox61. And also, that is kind of a cool thing about Lake Nyos. There was actually a buildup. I think it was like, I forgot what it was. It was either sulfur dioxide or it was carbon monoxide. It was some kind of a poisonous gas like that. And no one knows what happened, but for some reason, all of this gas that was held at the bottom of the lake just bubbled up to the surface, and it killed everything around the lake. Like, everything. I'm not joking. Everyone around here died. Every animal died. Literally anything that was living died that day, except for a very small handful of people who then told the story afterwards. No one knows why it even happened, but it was probably one of the most freak occurrences in history, and I think it ended up killing like 300, 400 people or something like that. It was a pretty crazy event. But I didn't even know that that happened on this day. I just remember the story. I don't know when it happened, so that's actually pretty wild to know that it happened on this day. But let's see here. Soviet coup attempt. I think the Soviet coup attempt was when, I think that was coming around the collapse of the Soviet Union just right before. So that's actually pretty cool to know that that would be happening right now back in 1991. And let's see here. X32. Oh, wait a minute, man. Did we have this in the DMs earlier today? I didn't respond to it. I saw it really quickly because, I was handling the whole, like, video editing thing today, but oh my God. This thing is ugly. Oh!
Oh my goodness, man, that's hideous. And also, Gunfox mentioned this earlier. This thing right here, oh goodness, it's tough. It's one of the ugliest ones.
Man, do I look like a real boy, Papa? It's like, no, you don't. You look ugly. My God, this thing is terrible. And its first flight was in 2000. My Lord.
You say you don't look like a real boy, but you look like an ugly bastard.
Dude, they didn't even want to like keep this thing up. They just let it rot. They were like, screw this thing. It's terrible. It rots. Like they just let the thing rot.
Yeah, it's like a beluga or something. It looks bad. Like oh man, that's bad. That's tough right there. I don't even know who designed this, by the way. Boeing? Oh, wait a minute, Boeing.
Boeing.
It looks okay.
I love it. It's beautiful. Like, it's great. I don't think there's anything wrong with this thing at all. Like,
It was a good try.
it was a great try. You know what? I think they ought to do it again. I think you know what? I think the government needs to give them more funding, Matthew. More money, more money.
Give them more money.
More money, better money.
Long-lasting money.
Long-lasting money. We need lots of money. I mean, it's not that bad, Matthew. I mean, it's not a terrible looking plane. It's just it's a little rough, but with some fine tuning, I'm sure something great could come out of this thing.
I probably so. With enough time and enough thought put toward it, all the engineers will go home safely with this one.
I think they will. You know what, Matthew? I believe it. Like this one, like that one. Like I think
yes, like that, just like that.
just like that. I think it will do well. I think it will do well. Oh my goodness, that thing is actually really ugly. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Gunfox61. But still, thank you so much for sharing that hideous-looking plane with us, and thank you for sharing the day in history again. I love those, actually. They're really cool. And also, we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor, Gunfox61. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so grabbing one from the chat here, in honor of Gunfox, this one's going to go to Half Nutter, who says, what happened to the North Korean troops that were promised?
We don't even know, Nutters. Like, we don't know. They just never showed up, and we've heard no updates of them traveling through Russia either, so we have no clue. They could be anywhere at this point, or they could be nowhere. They could still be inside of North Korea right now. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. There's not really a lot to work off of there, but that's the answer for the large part. But still, thank you so much once again, Gunfox61, for sponsoring the live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And also, Monster Lab, I'm not talking about the F-104. You're taking words and putting them in my mouth. The F-104 Starfighter was the thing. Like, it was one of the coolest looking planes in my opinion, because it was literally just like a space needle, like best way to explain it. Like, look at that and tell me that doesn't look cool. I mean, these things are literally just flying rockets nearly.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty sharp. Like, I like it. It's really pointy.
Yeah, but that prototype thing, whatever the hell they made out of it, that thing's ugly. But this thing, well, actually, that's a NASA F-104. I'm trying to find, like, a full picture. Here we go, like this West German F-104. This one actually has the rocket assist launch thing, so that way they could take off quicker for interceptors. Like, they were actually, like, rail-mounted and everything. Really cool fact, but that's, like, a rabbit hole for another time. But still, I think the Starfighter looks sick. That prototype thing that they made out of a Starfighter, though, that thing looks stupid because the wings were really high up on the fuselage, and also they like attach these additional engines to the sides of the wings. I was like, yeah, that's ugly. But the original F-104, super cool, like really cool interceptor design. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here is going to go to Hokey Redneck, who puts in a $50 donation once again. And huge shout out, Hokey, for the second support of the night. He said, has Andrew ever covered the molasses deaths in Boston?
I have not talked about that on stream, Hokey Redneck. Interesting rabbit hole. Probably one of the most interesting ones to come out of that area of Boston. And also, it's kind of like the Dublin whiskey fire of the late 1800s, where like a whole bunch of Irish people drank themselves to death from the whiskey that was flowing down the streets. Pretty wild story in itself. But the Great Molasses Flood is pretty freaking wild in its own instance. Because what happened in this area of Boston, right up there, and I can actually show you where that is in Boston. So let me go over here to the city of Boston. So it's actually in one of the older districts. It's in the North End. It's actually where the Andrew G. Pulapolo Junior Athletic Field is nowadays. This is actually where the Great Molasses Flood happened. You can see it right there. But what was happening back in the day was that there was this giant molasses factory that was here in this part of the town. And they were producing molasses. And they would put the molasses into these giant vats. And I believe they were made of iron or steel. And let me see if I can make sure. Let's see, produced ethanol. Let's see here, considerable amount of molasses. Harborside, ships transfer molasses. The molasses tank stood 50 feet tall and 90 feet in diameter and contained as much as 2.3 million U.S. gallons of molasses. A lot of molasses. And as many of y'all will know, molasses is pretty viscous and kind of like really like sticky actually. But what's interesting about this is that the temperature in Boston that day was above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And it started to climb rapidly. And so what happened is that the tank that this molasses was stored in, because of the rapidly expanding temperature and the production of ethanol because of that rising temperature, it ended up expanding the giant tank that this molasses was in so much that it exploded. And this was the aftermath. It literally wiped buildings off the map. It killed like 20-something people. It was a freaking mess. And the molasses was like, you know, of course it was viscous enough that if you got caught in it, you couldn't try and like float to the top or anything. You just got suffocated by it. So a lot of people actually died by suffocation inside of the molasses that was spreading everywhere. And so it was a huge disaster. It was horrendous. Made national news. It was one of those things that's like a freak incident. Like people are going to be talking about this forever. And a lot of people still actually talk about this in this area of Boston. They said that for years, this area of Boston actually had the sweet smell of molasses because it was still all over stuff. Like they tried to clean it off, but like the molecules that would like exude the scent, they still stuck around. So you could still smell molasses well into like the 40s in this part of the city. And apparently nowadays they say that you could still maybe smell it here and there. I'm doubting that a lot. I'll have to eventually go here to find out. But still like a crazy fact about this area. And now it's just a couple of baseball fields right up here. Like that's it. No buildings there or anything anymore. The area's completely changed actually since then, so I'm doubting that you could smell anything. But still pretty wild story. One of those crazy things, kind of like the Dublin whiskey fire. So let me see. Here we go. The Dublin whiskey fire. This was a crazy one because much like the rupture of the molasses tank in Dublin, a whiskey tank in 1875, well, actually several of them ended up rupturing. I think it was similar to something like this. It was like a change in temperature created a rupture in the barrels that were holding the whiskey. The whiskey spread. A lantern ended up catching the whiskey on fire. Pigs started screaming. Everyone woke up, and everyone got out A-OK. Everyone lived through the fire. But then the whiskey started flowing down the streets. And y'all would not believe it. This is like the most stereotypical thing that a lot of people would think of the Irish. People started like using their hands, man. They like cup the whiskey off of the bottom of the street and start drinking it. And they drank so much. I think like 13 people died from alcohol poisoning from drinking whiskey off the street until they died.
That is that's interesting.
Like it's wild. Like this is like one of those other crazy stories. Like the Boston molasses flood and the Dublin whiskey fire are like in the same category of like crazy disasters where people died in like crazy, bizarre, morbid ways. But still, pretty weird, like kind of neat, talking about how much time has passed. It's a bit of a tragedy, but still whack to see something like that happen. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, Hokey Redneck, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing rolling. So a big thank you to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Roy Tooley, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Roy, for that support as well. We appreciate it very much. He says, y'all do a great job, and thank you very much as well. He said, from Williston, North Dakota.
And Williston, North Dakota. Dang, this is way up there in the northwestern side of North Dakota. I thought it was going to be in, like, the southern side, because it seems to me like most people live, like, near Interstate 94 in North Dakota. But still, pretty cool. Like, look at that. Williston, North Dakota. What does it look like out here in Williston? Actually, it's really green. Like, dude, that's like some of the greenest grass I have ever seen.
I don't think I've ever seen a town in North Dakota. I've never really looked.
Me either. This is new. There's moose. They have moose. And just really pretty up here, actually. Like, for some reason, I thought it looked kind of a little barren out here in this area of North Dakota. But no, it's actually really, really pretty. It snows a good bit, though. I'm sure of that. But, man, they got, like, a giant, massive airport. I mean, dude, you can't beat this stuff. You got 3 amigos? Dude, you've got it made. Oh, what's this? Is that a Canadian Pacific? No, that's a Great Northern. I should have known. The boiler's painted green. But, cool, a Great Northern. What do you know? That's really neat. Got this, like, British-looking building, like a Tudor style. Pretty neat. What is this called? Home of Economy. All right.
Oh, man, that place is in rough shape if it's home of economy.
Dude, like Wall Street these days.
I'm feeling really bearish on this one.
Man, you're feeling a little rough. But this place does not look bad. It's actually really pretty out here. Like, this picture, this is really nice. We got to go up here someday and see this place. Really neat. And so, I gotta say, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for enjoying this channel, Roy Tooley. And thank you for being one of our viewers all the way from up there in, like, the far reaches of North Dakota. It's actually wildly pretty up there. And one day, hopefully, we'll be able to come up there and see the place ourselves. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Sandra, who puts in a $20 donation. Thank you very much, Sandra, for that support. It said, good morning from the UK to all the LSA, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, Sandra, and good morning to the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and Northern Ireland. Really cool place. We love the place. It's beautiful over there. Really nice people, too, as far as we saw over there. I like them. Matthew's got a bone to pick with a couple of people over there, even the American ones. But, it is what it is. Like, it is what it is. But still, thank you so much once again for being here tonight. Thank you for enjoying the channel enough to support it and help it to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the chat. And so, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the one from the chat is going to go to Ada60, who said, do you think that Wagner is training the contract troops before entering the battle?
I don't think so. Because the Wagner guys probably hate the Russian regulars, the conscript guys, because they were the ones who ended up kind of screwing them over in the end. But maybe, but I'm doubting it a little bit. I'm doubting the Wagner's even in Kursk right now, because we've never even seen hair nor hide of their existence in the entire campaign so far. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, with sponsoring that live chat right there, the Sandra, I got to thank you once again. It's greatly appreciated. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and also I see Hokey Redneck. He's saying in the live chat out here, he's saying, y'all make sure you go for 7 days on the vacation instead of just 4. We honestly probably would go for longer than 4, but the truth is, we don't want to push our luck with the YouTube analytics because we really don't exactly know how many days you can take off, for example, from streaming, and whether or not it's going to mess with analytics or not, because YouTube already sort of takes a really lax approach to pushing the streams, and we're worried that if we take off too long, that maybe they're not going to push the streams at all, and then we're going to have a big problem with that. So we can't take off too long, but we will put the videos out still while we're on the little vacation, the little trip. But we'll do it, because it only takes about 3 hours or so to make the short war videos. So we can do that on the go. And also I got a mobile setup to be able to do it as well. So we'll do it that way. But we would go longer, trust me. But with that, we're moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Wee Buffett. Who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Wee Buffett, for that support. And they said, I love you guys, and you guys give the most information out of any other channel, and you guys make jokes and make it fun. And thank you guys for giving us the real news. And thank you very much.
Thank you for the kind words, Wee Buffet. Wee Buffett. Wee Buffet. I gotta thank you so much for the support and really enjoying the channel, and thank you for enjoying our style. It's one of a kind, actually, in the war coverage world. No one covers it like we do. Some people, well, a lot of people out there who run other YouTube channels like to make it sound like we're bad people because we don't conform to the mold, we don't conform to the norm, which is kind of weird considering that a lot of those people make it like a big thing where they're like, hey, be yourself, do your thing, unless if you're really doing your thing, then screw you, you asshole. And it's like, okay, it's like, I don't know what's up with that, like, that's a little weird, but okay. But beyond that, I gotta thank you for enjoying what we do, because I love to know that people actually enjoy how we cover this, our style, with joking and trying to make it a little bit more fun than the reality of it. It's not a fun thing. War is. It's pretty miserable, but we try and make it a little bit more tolerable, at least by joking and laughing through it. Because would you rather cry through the whole thing or get a little laugh out of it here and there if you can? And I'm sure a lot of people would rather laugh through something than cry through it. And so, thank you so much once again for really enjoying this channel. Thank you for the kind words as well, Wee Buffett. It means a lot to us, and thank you so much for also saying that the news is real, because we try our best to make sure that we can back up and support our news as best as we can with video and picture evidence. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Texicali74, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much for the support. And also, I want to know, I'm curious. It says Texicali. Did you move from California to Texas? I'm curious. Or maybe I'm just making all that up. But I'd be curious to know. But they said, a longtime listener and first-time super chat. And the question is, could the enforcer please show us on the war map where that airbase that just got struck is? And I would like to see how far away it is from the border. And Semper Fi.
And Semper Fi. And also, to answer your question, it is actually about right here on the war map. So I'm going to keep my mouse cursor right there. It's about right there. Right there. Right in that little spot. And if I wanted to show you on the satellite picture, it's actually a lot easier, because we can actually find the airfield right there. So there it is. And we're going to zoom out again. It is right where the mouse cursor is. Right there relative to Ukraine. So it's actually a pretty good distance away. It's about 300 miles away from the active front line, so it's pretty deep inside of Russia, but once again got hit. It's not the farthest range hit we've seen in this area. We've actually seen a hit strike the airfield at Ottobinsk down here and knock out 2 Su-57s. And this is probably the longest range strike we've ever seen in this region of Russia on an airfield. Is that Japanese? What the hell is this? $13 a night. You get your liver stolen here.
That was kind of sketchy, that room right there.
I'm not trusting this place at $13 a night. You ain't finding me in here. I'm not gonna be dead. I know the horror movies. And also, what the hell is Glitz? Like, what is this place? Like, what are they doing out here in Ottobinsk? Like, it's just, what the hell is it? It was Pokrovsk. Like, what are these places? Hang on. Okay. All right. It's a tin shed substation. Receipt. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I think Ottobinsk is like a fever dream or something, because it doesn't really seem like this place should exist. Like this Japanese named hotel, this place called Glitz. Like, I don't even know what the hell that word means. Like, and I don't even know what the hell these stores are either. At least the train station's got to look normal, right? Okay, so maybe not. Okay, I don't know what the hell's going on. Oh my god, this place looks like a psych ward.
It looks like maybe like an office in Puerto Rico.
Man, oh my goodness. Yeah, this is rough. But anyways, this is where the deepest strike happened inside of a Russian airfield here in the area in the Russian Don, because this entire area is called the Don region. But yeah, that's where the airfield is in particular, and I hope that does help out with the with where that exactly was, so that way everyone may know. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Texacala74, of course, Simplify, and thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running and being a Lee Spring Army Marine of the Lee Spring Army Navy Marine Corps. Going off the Chinese Navy convention. I'm just kidding. The Lee Spring Army's Marine Corps is actually the Lee Spring Marine Corps, the LSMC, because while we don't talk about this a lot, there are naming conventions for every other branch. The Lee Spring Army is like the main one, and then there's the Lee Spring Air Force, and then there's the Lee Spring Navy, the Lee Spring Marine Corps. So depending on your branch, if you actually serve, you can just interchange the Army with whatever branch you're in: the Lee Spring Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Space Force, even if you're in the Space Force. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope we addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Davo LBC, and thank you very much. I think it was Davo, actually. Davo for putting in that $10 support. Thank you very much. He said, does anybody have any cream beef to put on all that toast?
Man, honestly, Matthew, that sounds good right about now, that cream beef stuff on toast. Like, I haven't had a meal like that in years, really.
I'm not even sure what cream beef is, but it sounds like it could be good. Is that like gravy?
1 second. Let me go pull it up really quickly by its actual name. So let's see here. Let me go see a picture of it. Let me go get the best picture I can of this thing. You've eaten it before. It's just that, the name is a little weird, because the nickname for this thing is like cream beef on toast. It's actually called shit on a shingle. But that's what it looks. Oh, come on. There we go. That's what it looks like.
Your seafood.
Yeah, but that's what it looks like. You've had this before.
Yeah, I've seen that. I actually don't. I don't think I liked it, actually, to be honest, if I remember this properly.
Man, I thought it was good. I liked it. Like I was enjoying it, every minute of it.
I don't know about that. If it's called shit on a shingle, I don't know. I don't know if I want that.
Well, man, it's good enough. You'll shit your shingle. But beyond that, I gotta say, where in the world is all that cream beef to put on all that toast? I mean, dang, they got a whole bakery out here. But still, thank you so much for the support, Davo LBC, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope I addressed that fairly well. I see a lot of people are actually big fans of the cream beef on toast, or shit on a shingle, as some people call it. I like it. I mean, Matthew doesn't. But then again, I like Spam. So, you can't really take my taste as much of anything, because I literally like the ultra processed meats. So, it is what it is. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to JamFan WP Dad, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much to JamFan for that support. They said, what about a long-term control of Kursk by Ukraine? And what if Ukraine gave them a referendum to join Ukraine in the parts of Russia where Ukraine has invaded and will probably hold? Too much escalation.
I would say I'm a fan of that, JamFan WP Dad, but the reality is that if Ukraine creates an autonomous republic out of the area they control in Kursk, it's impossible from that point forward on a diplomatic standpoint to trade land for land, if that's what Ukraine's going for. Because instead of Ukraine actually possessing the land to give back to Russia, now it's a third-party autonomous republic that is an entity unto itself and may not want to end up being reintegrated into Russia. So while it seems like a really good idea on paper, and honestly it's the one that would be the right thing to do, it would really hinder Ukraine's diplomatic maneuvers in the future and make it a lot more difficult to try and negotiate with the Russians later on in the war if they wanted to trade it for something inside of Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, kind of explain the complexity as to why they may not ever hold a referendum there. If they do, I'll be confused as to why they're doing it, actually, but they may. It's just that it'll start to really mess with the whole land for land kind of a deal that they may be going for in the future. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here is going to go to Epic Trains Canada, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Epic Trains, for that support once more. He said, shake out the pre-war station in Essen, Germany, and compare it to the modern one. And the old one is a steampunk masterpiece, and the new one is a sad and dreary, LOL. And Slav Ukraine.
And let's see. The Essen Hauptbahnhof. Ew, yeah, that's ugly. God, that's ugly. My goodness. That thing, I mean,
Ah, yes. Take away all the soul from this. That's what you have here is nothing but soulless. Also, that McDonald's is like perfectly communist looking. By the way, over there on the right with that like steel sheeting on the side of it.
bum, 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 bum,
McDonald's.
bum.
You'll own nothing and eat hamburger.
Yeah, and then man, you got the Deutsche Bahn logo on the walls, like some kind of a post-apocalyptic hell. You know, it's like you want to ride the train, ride Deutsche Bahn. I don't like it, but I do agree with you. I do like the train station before. This is actually a famous example of modernism destroying classic beauty, because this is actually what it looked like at the beginning, not that impressive, but what they rebuilt it into a little bit later was impressive. This was the train station that they actually had. Beautiful thing, like gorgeous. It really does emphasize the architectural style of the region in Germany, because Germany actually has multiple different architectural styles depending on what part of Germany you're in. Like a lot of people here in America, they usually associate everything German with Bavaria. Everyone has a really Bavarian mindset about Germany here in America, with like the Lederhosen and the Oktoberfest thing, because that didn't really happen much over the rest of Germany. It happens in the modern day, but historically, most of that was relegated to the Kingdom of Bavaria, which made up this area in between Nuremberg and Munich. Those were the two main cities of that kingdom. But then the rest of Germany was made up of multiple different city-states and kingdoms, like Brandenburg or Prussia later on, or, for example, the millions of them that made up West Germany, or modern-day West Germany. And Essen was one of those places in the Rhine Valley. And it's really sad to see that beautiful, I mean, gorgeous train stations, architectural wonders, really, were destroyed, because it really gets rid of a lot of the cultural identity of a region to go with modernism, or what I would call globalist architecture, because I'm 100% for the Western world, standing for united Western interests, but at the same time, I like to see the cultural flair and uniqueness up here in the different regions that there are in the world. You know, like instead of seeing the same skyscrapers in London and New York, I would like to see different kinds of architectural designs in American cities and British cities. Same with French and German, because it just allows you that kind of variety, and it also gives the people of these cities a sense of belonging to the specific region. They have a specific way of doing things, a specific way that their buildings look, and they're proud of it. And I think that that's something that's kind of sorely missed in the modern world. But here's a view of the central ticket office. I mean, look at this. It was so nice. It really did emphasize everything about this area and the kind of architecture they had and everything. And it's just sad to see that it's gone. But let's see here. Let me see if I can get another picture of this thing. Oh, dang it. And so with that, Matthew's like, we have to move on. We really do. But I could talk on and on and on forever about architecture and different designs and all that stuff. But still, wish we could talk about this more. But sadly, we are getting a little pressed for time. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again, Epic Trains Canada, for also being a rail fan, kind of like I am, but more so. But still, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Vulture 1066, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Vulture, for that support as well. They said, what is mob status on the North Fleet from a Norwegian?
Right now we know that these Kuznetsov is probably never going to sail again, and beyond that, that fleet seems to be entirely operational, suffering no attrition, considering that it's in peacetime currently. I hope that gives a good report on it, because I don't really know much about the North Fleet at the moment. It's kind of out of our realm of war coverage. It kind of is a periphery thing, considering that most of it's about the war in Ukraine and assets used currently in the war. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again, Vulture 1066, for the support and help this channel keep on running. And hey, Vulture, is 1066 a reference to the Battle of Hastings in 1066, where King Harold the First of England was overthrown by William the Bastard? Is that a reference to that? Because if so, that's pretty cool. I like that. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mr. Tapico, who puts in a $5 donation, and thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, you guys do great work, and thanks for all the time and effort you put in, and thank you very much for the kind words. He said, do you think that Ukraine is grabbing land because of what could happen in November?
I think that Ukraine is grabbing land for other reasons. I'll be honest. I don't think no matter what happens in November, things are actually going to change in the Ukrainian situation. I'll be entirely honest. We're kind of an outlier on this channel in saying that. And of course, we're not going to get into politics, and I'm not going to break our no politics rule to talk about it in great depth. But what is happening with U.S. support relative to Ukraine is an American imperative. It is a Western imperative. And for that reason, while it seems like there is a difference in opinion publicly on people, well, sides supporting Ukraine or not supporting Ukraine, you'll see that no matter who gets elected, even if they said they didn't support Ukraine or they weren't really a big fan of the war beforehand, they will become a big fan of the war once they get elected. So that's really how it goes. Like, a lot of people don't believe me on that, but just wait and see. If that did happen, you'll see that Ukraine support will continue to flow, and the roles in the government will just reverse. The side that was against the war right now will now be for the war, and the side that was for the war beforehand will then be against the war afterwards. And so, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you so much for enjoying the work and effort that we put in, because we really do put in our best efforts, I hope, at least. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you, Jack Ray, as well. He said, for the punch and powder fund, damn, I'm not living it down. He said, aim high.
Yeah, thank you so much for the punch and powder fund. And we will aim high. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to LSA Sergeant Figman, who puts in a 2 and says, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And I gotta say, thank you so much once again for support. LSA Sergeant Figman, an absolute legend of the Lee Spring Army. And please do hit the like button. That is an order. We've gotten up to 3,600 likes tonight. Any higher, we'll be incredibly happy with. And we see Togi Redneck saying in parentheses, take 7 days off, like it's an instruction in an instruction manual. It's like, take 7 days off. I wish we could, but much like Matthew said, we do have to make sure that we have a channel to come back to at the end of a vacation, and so we can't really be gone too long, because then the channel could end up taking a really significant hit in the algorithms, because YouTube will think that we're an unreliable channel, and then they end up hitting us for that. So while we do want to take an enjoyable length vacation, at the same time we also have to keep into consideration that YouTube might bust our kneecaps out if we do something like that. And we might not, like, this stream might not ever get pushed again if we took 7 whole days off, because the longest this stream has not run was for 4 days straight. That's when I had the Wuhan Whirlybird, and even when we came back from that, YouTube was pushing us a lot less. Like, we went from having 7,000 viewers before that, like on average, like throughout a stream, or really at the peak, like 7,000 to 8,000 live viewers, to after we came back, it was around 5 or maybe the high 5,000s. And so they really did noticeably push us less when we had to fight our way back up to where we are right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Still, thank you so much for wanting us to take 7 days off. That's incredibly nice of you, but we do want to make sure that the LSA truly never dies as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Osoran, who puts in a 2 and says, Shrek said, what are you doing in my swamp?
What are you doing in my swamp? I forgot how he talks, really. But beyond that, I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who helped make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing going. And so, huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, David Long said, can't you guys do a mobile broadcast? Take the computer? We could, like, if I ended up making a mobile setup, hypothetically, we could. But the thing is that I'm really, how do I say it? The best way for me to say it, I'm really anal about my setup when I'm running the stream. I can't really, like, change the whole setup and do it from, like, a hotel room. One, I'd probably be so loud we'd get a noise complaint. And two, the other thing is that Wi-Fi is usually pretty splotchy in the hotels, even when they say it's really high speed. Usually is not. Like, we've seen that every time Matthew's ever gone anywhere, and he's in a hotel, the connection is dog water most of the time. And so that ends up being a little bit of an issue. And on top of that, due to our work schedule... hello? Oh no, we flatlined right at the end! What the hell? Hello? 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 please.
Oh, hello.
Oh,
Are we back?
I think we're back. I think we're back. What are you thinking?
Oh dear. Oh dear. We went through some terrible lag.
Oh man. Oh man. But beyond that, I think we're back. I think we're all the way back. But usually, like, our Wi-Fi connection here is kind of splotchy. In a hotel, it would be double splotchy. It would not be good at all. And also on top of that, due to our work schedules with this stream, well, not really Matthew's work schedule, but particularly mine, I have to drink so much coffee before this stream. And I know a lot of people are like, just don't drink the coffee. If I didn't, I would start yawning really badly about an hour in because I would get exhausted. And so I have to drink a lot of coffee. And so because of that, I stay up usually till 3 or 4 in the morning. And then that means when I sleep, I wake up at around 12 or 1 in the afternoon, or 11, usually 11:30. But sometimes it can be 12 or 1 if I'm really, really exhausted. And so then doing that, I really don't get a vacation. I'm just kind of really inconveniencing myself and moving around from place to place a lot, day to day, but I'm not really getting to vacation. I'm just kind of adding a lot of burden while also running the stream. So if we take a vacation, we really have to like actually take the vacation instead of trying to do both, because we can't, do both of them because of the scheduling side of things. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Wellness LSA Latvia, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Wellness, for always supporting the channel, and we appreciate it very much. He said, I love this channel. News, history, and special rabbit holes. And greetings from Latvia. And we continue to build a stronger border with Russia. And question from the chat.
Hey, thank you so much for the support. Wellness LSA Latvia, one of our viewers from Latvia, believe it or not. Actually, he's from Lithuania. I'm just kidding. But beyond that, I got to say thank you so much for being from Latvia. Really cool to know that you're building a stronger border with Russia. And also, thank you so much for enjoying the rabbit holes. Right now, Maddie's putting a lot of pressure on me in the background to cut those down. But still, I love them. I think they're incredibly fun. And I got to thank you so much for the support and loving the channel, the news, the history, and those rabbit holes, those dag-nabbit rabbit holes. And thank you so much for letting us know that Latvia is building a stronger border with Russia. And I would hope that y'all are. And so with that, big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so that live chat that was requested goes to Langdog89, who says, do you think that France will start sending its forces to Africa to Wagner forces?
Actually, French forces are currently in Africa, at least French special forces, considering that they kind of run like a shadow colony empire down there still, really. That's kind of like the reality down there in West Africa. There kind of are some there. I don't think they're going to be sending more than special forces in the future. I think it'll just remain special forces like it has been for a while. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again, Wellness LSA Latvia, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Butchie777, longtime channel legend. And thank you very much for that $2 support. And they put in, guess what? A hot dog emoji to let us all know what's really happening. So thank you very much, Butchie, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, we love them hot dogs. You know what I mean? Like, actually, we don't. We don't like hot dogs. We like hamburgers. Hamburgers are better. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Butchie777, to help this channel keep on running. And thank you once again for reminding us what we're not, which is a failure. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we have now finally made it on to the live chat segment. And boy, howdy, do we have some live chats to cover. And so, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so first up, we had the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight, it was Cliff Sampson, Mark Hodges, Earl Banu, Kevin J., as well as Paul Schultz and David Millsaps. They said, LSA core Morse code decipher says, it says, Russia is being betrayed by their own regional governments. LOL. Can you even imagine? LSA.
And that is the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message, and I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct on the 911th day of the war. That is really impressive that y'all have gotten that correct for 911 days, because we are starting to count down the days to the 1000th day of war. Pretty crazy to think that y'all been doing that the entire time, and getting it dead on the nail pretty much every single time as well. I can't think of a single time y'all have actually gotten that wrong. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this live chat question here goes to JMP Traveler, who says, does the lack of military response, so Putin, let's see here. Let's see here.
Does the
I'm trying
lack
to
of
decipher. I
military
think there was a
response
typo.
mean Putin is in charge of military movements in response? I think that's what it is.
All right, then you go for it, man. Go for it.
Oh, I thought you were going to read it again like that. I was like, oh, okay. So JMP Traveler said, just make sure to reiterate this for everyone. Does the lack of military response mean Putin is in charge of military movements and responses? Possibly so, because he may be trying to micromanage everywhere, and you can't really do that considering the amount of forces they have at their disposal. So that may be a reason why we're seeing that there's just some like complete oversights in most areas. That may be the case actually, but I can't say that for certain. But with that, well, actually, we can say that for certain in Kursk because he did appoint his bodyguard to command the defense in this area, and the bodyguard has no military experience at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And thank you once again for asking a good question, JMP Traveler. Thank you for being an old guard as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Fell, who says, will the U.S. send Ukraine more Bradley submarines?
Bradley submarines, like that guy said in the translation at the beginning, man, he said, this is our submarine. It's like, no. It's like, no, that's not a submarine, dude. But yes, we will be sending them eventually more Bradley submarines. We'll be sending them more ammo, real ammo, long-lasting ammo. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Pretty good joke, though. I like that one. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Guamson Cruz, who says, how far is the Kursk front from Moscow, and is it feasible to get it into artillery range?
Not really. Like, we're talking about missile artillery or rocket artillery, maybe, but right now that front is about 290 miles away from Moscow. So if you were using a Storm Shadow or a Scalp EG, Moscow's in range of artillery, if you call that artillery. And if you're talking about extended range ATACMS, it's also within range as well, but conventional artillery, like conventional rocket artillery, has a maximum distance of about 50 miles. The HIMARS has a distance of about 50 miles. So Kursk, the city, is within artillery distance, but not Moscow, not by a long shot. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Mr. Drake, who says, how many Ukraine soldiers in Russia, and is enough to take and hold Kursk City? And I would think, it would require a lot more.
I think it would require a lot more, not to hold Kursk City, but to take it. Initially, it would take a lot. But to hold it, it actually doesn't take that much. You could actually send in a lot of light forces, like paramilitary police forces, to really hold down that area. It's kind of like really everyone has a concept like that. Usually the Chinese and their doctrine, they send in the People's Armed Police to hold down areas that have been captured like a major city like that, and they would end up controlling the city itself. Because funnily enough, in occupation, it doesn't take a lot of forces to hold a major city like that. At least in theory. But beyond that, I would say at the moment, I don't think they have enough forces to take the city of Kursk. If they got that within their sights, they would probably start to divert a lot more forces into Kursk to take it, and we probably see that the Russians would also divert a lot more forces into Kursk to hold it, meaning that the war in Ukraine itself would probably be on hold while the Battle of Kursk continued on. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Butchie777, who says, is Russia going to want all these prisoners back as they are causing Ukraine more trouble looking after them rather than fighting them? And LSA.
They eventually will want them back. Good question, though. They are causing a lot of logistical burden for Ukraine, but the reality is that the rules of war don't say that you have to take care of prisoners at every expense, even if you can't take care of them. The rules of war say that you must take care of a prisoner if you have the viable means to take care of them, and if the frontline troops have the ability to take care of them to get them processed and into a prisoner of war camp. If you don't really have the means to take care of prisoners you're taking on anymore, it is actually entirely within the rules of war to just go take them out back and cap them. Like, no lie. That's really what a lot of people ended up doing through a lot of wars. Hell, even like the 82nd Airborne when in the 101st Airborne, when they were dropped off during the D-Day landings in Normandy, sometimes they'd end up taking on prisoners, and them being airborne units that are encircled, there's really no way to take care of or process those prisoners, so they usually would just end up taking them out back and capping them. Like, you know, very sad thing when you think about it, but there's no other option at that point, so it ends up becoming a very grim reality of taking prisoners in a situation like that. Ukraine could start doing something like that. Would they? I doubt it, and I hope that they wouldn't, because even still, it's kind of a bad optic in the modern day to do something like that, and I generally think it's a bad optic, even if it did happen back in the day. but it's something that could happen. So going off of that, the Russians will eventually want them back. It's just that I don't even know if they have enough Ukrainian prisoners to get them back. So the Ukrainians might just have to hold on to them either way. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Fayuma, who says, what is the smallest working nuke in Russia's arsenal?
That's a good question. I actually do not know. Smallest working nuke in Russia. Let's see. So the smallest nukes are tactical nukes that apparently yield a 1 to 2 kilotons of explosive force, apparently fired off of an Iskander. So technically, the Iskander is one of their smallest nuclear weapons because it has about a 1 to 2 kiloton yield, and it's a tactical nuke. So that's actually very interesting. I did not know that about the Iskander. I knew it was nuclear warhead capable. I didn't know the yield of the weapon, though. Apparently, it's one of the smallest ones they have. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. With that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Ronald Mead, who says, what do you know about the Ukrainians capturing a Russian warfare system?
I have not heard about that. If we're talking about tanks, APCs, infantry, Russian warfare systems, I do know about those. But as far as a Russian warfare system...
I think he meant like an electronic warfare system, probably.
Oh, and usually those aren't captured. Usually those are so far behind the lines, usually, that the Ukrainians smack them with artillery and they end up getting destroyed, and then the Russians tow them off somewhere to be scrapped. That's usually what happens. I've never really heard a lot of the Ukrainians capturing electronic warfare devices. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard of a single example of any of them being captured intact. So I would generally have to say, as far as those systems go, I have not heard of a single one of them being captured, as far as my information is concerned, and I could be wrong on that. So take it with a grain of salt. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, Ronald Mead. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is lucky last person through in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Don C., who says, have you seen Russian state TV is now slamming the Chechens on air? Excuse me. And the things are going downhill with that relationship.
I have seen that a little bit, like not a lot, because I don't really pay attention to Russian state television too much anymore, but I have seen that just a little bit, and it is wild to see that because they are getting, like, honestly kind of racist in their, like, hatred for the Chechens on TV, and I'm like, dang, like, you know, it's getting kind of rough. It seems like a lot of the Russian public may not be liking them that much anymore, but it looks like Putin and the central government are still trying to push this belief that they're like these really cool, like, mountain men, you know, kind of a deal, sort of a thing. But yeah, it doesn't look like it's going that well with the Russian public, at least from what I've seen. But with that, I hope that does answer that question fairly well. Really interesting question, by the way. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say a huge thank you so much to everyone who's been watching tonight. At the peak tonight, there was 10.3 thousand people here, correction. And over the course of the stream, 76,200 people have watched this stream from beginning to end. I get to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching this channel tonight and really enjoying it. It means a lot to us. We put our heart and soul into this thing. We go through hell or high water sometimes in the background to be able to make sure that this thing keeps on running. And I would keep this thing running no matter what we had to do in the background to ensure that. I got to thank everyone so much once again for enjoying. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to subscribe. Please make sure to like and comment. And a huge thanks to everyone who hit the like button tonight. Huge thanks to everyone in the chat. Huge thanks to everyone who just was here and watching. And also a big thanks to everyone who also supported the channel with super chats tonight, because all of y'all helped this channel to continue to be possible by allowing us to do this as a full-time job. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Least Spring Army. The Least Spring Army will never die.
And with that, that's the last minute of the stream. The last minute. Thank you all for another fantastic stream.
And also, for some reason, I can't do that voice very well tonight. But anyways, thank you all for another great stream tonight. It's been a very good one. And of course, we'll see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next nightly war news stream. And also, maybe midday tomorrow as well for a short war summary. But with that, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava. Thank you all once again. Get some rest and good night.
this.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.